Chapter 81, Tyr Hell Dragon. The skies over Macragge burned with unnatural fire. Rifts that defied the laws of Holy Terra tore open in the cold void, bleeding strange colors as the corrupting influence of Tzeentch surged through them. The Great Raider had resolved to rend Macragge as he had once sundered Cadia, using the advantage of warp travel to redeploy Chaos forces from across the galaxy. The Loyalist fleet was under brutal assault, straining to hold the line. Chaos vessels had begun disgorging Hell Talons and Hell Drakes onto the planet below. Heretical forces swelled on the ground and pressed Cadia Fortress in a siege meant to snuff out the sanctuary that preserved Guilliman's last vestige of life to make his return impossible. On the bridge of the Imperial Glory, Qin Yun watched the fleet's tactical display, clusters of red dots marking enemy ships, and felt a hard relief. He had made it in time. Otherwise, Guilliman's resurrection might have come to pass exactly as it had in his dream. Abaddon had thrown ever more terrible forces at Macragge to stop Kor from bringing the Primarch back. Under Brigadier General Shiatade's command, the fleet cut into the maelstrom. Space torpedoes streaked across the void, leaving smoking tails. Macrocannon salvos lit the dark with thunderous detonations. Laser arrays painted straight, deadly lines through the void. Then, suddenly, a brighter flare burst out. A Jeller field failed on an Imperial warship. Torpedoes struck the hull, the power core detonated, and the ship bloomed into a supernova of light. Oh my god, so this is what void warfare looks like? Shi Lang pressed his face to the viewport, wide-eyed. This scale is far beyond modern combat. I can't even imagine the computing power the game needs to render this. The War Master stood rigid, watching the battle unfold with an almost curious expression. Maybe this game isn't as inscrutable as we thought. Old Bird rubbed the cold metal skull in his hand and offered a new theory. The developers must have tech that alters dream perception. When we enter the dream, our perception is guided. When our subconscious accepts the world as real, the brain fills in the rest, the doctor continued. That's why, while dreaming, we rarely realize we're asleep. The Warhammer OL dreamscape works the same way. We supply the fine details so the inconsistencies don't register. We just feel everything is real. What about pain? The War Master asked. Pain and touch are simulated the same way, Old Bird said. They call up stored information in the brain or invent it to match the scene. Well reasoned, Bald Donkey said with a thumbs up. I'm no philosopher, just an observer. The others nodded. Maybe it really was a perception layer trick. 2 slaughter-class cruisers and a swarm of frigates, heading our way, Shi Lang said, drawing attention to a new cluster of contacts. Everyone peered out. 2 slaughter-class cruisers, hammered by fighters and frigates, closed on the Imperial Glory. Those cruisers were designed to charge, detonate, and withdraw. Massive engines, the infamous Skadix engine ring, short-range lances, and heavy macro cannons. But the class had a fatal flaw. Its Jeller field was unreliable. If it failed in the warp, the whole crew could succumb to corruption. The Imperium had stopped building them. The remaining ships were now almost exclusively in Chaos hands. Chaos warbands tolerated these risks. The hostile ships opened fire as they reached range. Lasers and missiles slammed against the Imperial Glory's Jeller field. The field rippled with purple lightning, shunting the worst of the attack into the warp, but the ship itself shuddered. Inside, alarms flashed and screamed. Lock on to the port-side slaughter-class cruiser, concentrate lance fire, overload its Geller generator, Shia ordered. Lances are among humanity's deadliest weapons, sustained, high-output beams. Shilling's enhancements had pushed the Imperial Glory's lances to unprecedented power. The ship's ventral turrets pivoted. 6 lance beams, 4 along the broadsides and 2 on the dorsal spine, slew until they converged on a single point. The targeted cruiser's Jeller field writhed as beam energy was cast into the churning Tzeentch Sea, but Shia's fire control model had already analyzed the generator's weak spots. The lances focused with surgical precision. The Slaughter class's Geller generator collapsed under overload. The projected field throttled, then died, opening a jagged gap in the cruiser's defenses. Beams punched through the armor, and then torpedoes and missiles slammed into the exposed hull. The cruiser detonated in a chain reaction that dragged nearby frigates and fighters into the blast. So badass! Someone cheered from the crowd. When will our hammer and sickle battle group get its own warship? Another asked. The players at the viewport clustered in eager chatter. Maybe once Macragge is reinforced, the game will update. Players could buy warships and hunt Xenos and Chaos fleets, September 9th guessed. Definitely, Chong Tianbian agreed. A campaign this big needs new gameplay. I can't wait for warship purchases. Our hammer and sickle group will be the first to do air-to-ground ops, Xiaopong dreamed, picturing himself as fleet commander, then leaping down in a mech to raise the enemy in the Omnissiah's name. Piangus scratched his head. I have an immature idea. Out with it, they urged. Could we recreate the Viking from StarCraft? He asked. After a void battle, we land as fighters and then transform into ground mechs. September 9th snorted. Cool for 3 seconds before a Zergling eats you. The scene shifted as Guan Bao suddenly diverted the conversation. That Chang Bampo wasn't ordinary. She was Yihong Courtesan House's top courtesan. She lost her armor, but refused to admit defeat. She'll fight Zilong again tomorrow. The War Master's expression soured, and the room dissolved into laughter, the earlier battlefield fantasies forgotten. Back on the bridge, Xia issued another order. Calculate enemy course, 90 degrees to port. Broadside salvos, mobile fire on the enemy group. The Imperial Glory's port thrusters fired. The hull pivoted. Broadsides thundered in sequence, the recoil making the deck shudder. The fleet mirrored the maneuver, and a storm of macrofire hammered the chaotic cruiser's void shield. Shield generators hiccuped and failed under the barrage. Plasma and thermonuclear warheads detonated across the hull. A spine of fire rose, then the reactor ruptured. The ship went nova, collapsing into a perfect yellow sphere of destruction. Target destroyed, a voice announced on the bridge. The crew cheered. Incoming comms request, a tech called out. Verification complete. Macragge Garrison Fleet Commander requesting. Xia glanced at Qin Yun. He gave the nod. Connect. A hollow image resolved, a tall officer with a bionic eye. Thank you for your assistance. I am Service, Commander of the Garrison Fleet. I am Brigadier General Xia Atat, Xia replied. Commander Calgar has opened a corridor for you to land, but the port is under siege. We can't guarantee a breakout, Service warned. If possible, you should airdrop directly to the surface. Calgar will clear a safe corridor. Qin Yun, Kor, Amaric, and the others reached the same decision in moments. Abandon the port breakout and airdrop straight to Macragg's surface, then push to Cadia Fortress. Go, Master, Shieling said quietly. I'll hold those bastards off in the warp. Thank you, Shieling, Qin Yun answered, and left the bridge with Kor at his side. The mission, landing on Macragge and reaching Hera to resurrect the Primarch, was critical. It could not fail. Under covering fire, the Imperial Glory reached the drop coordinates. Pods and transports began to rain into the atmosphere. Macragge City was a battlefield, anti-air emplacements chewing at Helldrakes and traitor aircraft. Raiders and Valkyries weaved between shattered statues and columned ruins, strafing defenders or dumping ordnance on ground targets. Flames swallowed colonnades, great sculptures toppled, temples became rubble. Loyalist fighters fought desperately for the skies. Transports peeled down toward Calgar's designated LZ. Chaos noticed the arrivals. Helldrakes roared and dove. One transport erupted in midair, a ball of flame, and soldiers screamed as the wreckage plummeted, bodies splattering across the ground. Players like Blood Pigeon swung Valkyries and escort fighters to intercept, but enemy numbers were relentless. Qin Yun felt the gunship tremble under incoming fire. He could not let Kor or the armor of fate be lost. He yanked the hatch, beat his wings, and vaulted into the sky. In his hand blazed a power spear Kor had given him. White wings spread behind him as he dove for a Helldrake. A Helldrake was a blasphemous fusion of flesh, machine, and daemon, wings far larger than a Stormhawk's. Qin Yun drove the spear through the creature's head armor into a cockpit of slick flesh and exposed bone. A mass of mouths and teeth writhed in the cockpit, once a loyal space marine, now ruined by betrayal and warp corruption. Their agony and hatred had fed the demon engines until pilot and machine were one. The players watched in stunned, jockeying commentary. Tearing a Helldrake apart with bare hands? Has the guide's combat power gotten that strong? One murmured. He's an E-grade greater daemon now. Of course he can bludgeon the way forward, another said. Qin Yun could not hear them over the roar of combat. He ripped the Helldrake apart and spun for another, killing with brutal speed. The defenders on the ground finally noticed the white-winged figure, over 3 meters tall, spear in hand, slaying daemon engines. Someone in Cadia Fortress whispered in disbelief. Sanguinius? Commander Calgar murmured, stunned. No one could answer him. 82. Calgar's fury, Qin Yun's display stunned everyone. Praise him, Celestine and her battle sisters intoned in unison, hailing the great god emperor. Greyfax frowned. Qin Yun's actions made her wonder whether this was truly a miracle. The soldiers on the ground cheered. This sight cut through their despair and lifted their spirits. They shouted the emperor's name, morale surging, and launched a counterattack. Eldrad, Ulthran, and Yvraine watched Qin Yun soar above the battlefield, their faces a mixture of astonishment and doubt. The futures they had once read did not resemble this. Everything seemed to have shifted. The Eye of Terror is widening, and the Chaos Gods grow stronger, Eldrad muttered. But as humanity's greatest psyker, the one who bears the Golden Throne, he must have gained unprecedented power. Eldrad remembered the old Battle of Terra, when the Emperor stood one step from godhood and a single name echoed across the galaxy, Dark King. It had been the Emperor's companions, all among them, who persuaded him to reject that destiny, to defeat Horus as a man, not as a god, or else humanity would itself be consumed and extinguished, perhaps even giving birth to another chaos entity. The Emperor had relinquished the dark power and faced Horus as a human. Eldrad had been grateful then that the secret cult had been rooted out. Had humanity been extinguished in the cult's vision, the Emperor, bereft of hope, might have chosen annihilation, creating a dark king and leaving the galaxy barren for ages. For now, however, Eldrad thought, humanity growing stronger served the Eldar's interests. Only by pressing the Chaos Gods could they hope to wrest the remaining Crone Sword from the Prince of Pleasure. Yvraine comforted her people. They had already reclaimed 4 of the 5 Crone Swords that had awakened the Chaos Gods. The last lay in Slaanesh's realm. They could only seize it if they lured the Prince of Pleasure away, or if he revealed the sword in battle. Explosions rocked the air as Qin Yun cut a path through Helldrakes and traitor fighters, sending them up in fireballs. Loyalist gunships and fighters joined the fray, forcing the enemy to change course and withdraw. Drop pods slammed into the ground with deafening impacts, cracking the surface, hatches blasted open, and squads of Astartes poured out. For the guide! For the Emperor! The War Master cried, leading the charge. Thousands of Astartes, furious and resolute, surged forward. Transport ships docked and disgorged more legionaries. Mechs of the Hammer and Sickle battle group, enhanced Zagu 1s, stomped onto the field, guns booming and plasma clouds expanding, incinerating swathes of Chaos warriors. Kor watched them with a calculating gleam. From the past days together, he knew these mechs were not pure STC work, but newly developed machines, anathema to the conservative Adeptus Mechanicus. It was a direct challenge to Mars' authority and the old rules. Kor, a radical at heart, was delighted. Let someone act as vanguard and break the Mechanicus' antiquated edicts. He wondered what storm would follow if an Emperor's envoy openly flouted Mars. For the Omnissiah, the mech crews shouted. Xiao Pang, having lost his enhanced Zagu 01 confronting a Corn Grater Daemon, now wore a Tomorrow Series heavy exoskeleton to guard the mech's joints against enemy assaults. His automatic shoulder cannons barked and bolter rounds thundered. Several foes marked with the 8-pointed Chaos Sigil erupted into pieces. The Omnissiah's wrath descends. Despair, he yelled as he charged. Elsewhere, the War Master, clad in CMC power armor, roared into the Chaos Space Marines with a chainsword. The blade screamed and tore through a Black Legion warrior, then cleaved another's head free. Since his duel with Lucius, his skills had improved markedly. Dual wielding was no longer simply practiced technique, but a sharpened art. Still need strong opponents as whetstones, he thought, then wondered idly how Lucius would return this time. Lucius, the Emperor's chosen in his own blasphemous way, could never be used by Slaanesh to resurrect while the Emperor's blessing remained, so how would the Prince of Pleasure manage it? War Master pushed the question aside and focused on the fight. If they crossed paths again, he'd see to it the duel was fair, and that Lucius would be humiliated. Qin Yun retracted his wings and dropped into the enemy ranks like a falling star, his impact throwing foes aside. He reaped lives with a spear blow that struck with thunderous force. Chaos Space Marines swarmed to take his head, but his technique was devastating in its simplicity, thrusts aimed like lightning at vital points. A Marine was impaled and silenced before his cry could form. Qin Yun wrenched the spear free and drove on. The ordinary Chaos Marines were lambs before him. Soon a mound of corpses lay in his wake. Celestine, Emeric, and others also pressed into the fight. The Chaos troops' morale collapsed, and survivors fled in disarray. Qin Yun and the Loyalists then turned and made for Cadia Fortress. Cadia Fortress sprawled beneath a shimmering void shield. Anti-air batteries studded its thick, towering walls. Moments later, the massive armored gate at its base hissed as it opened. Commander Calgar, chapter master of the Ultramarines and Lord of Macragge, strode out, huge in Azure Artificer power armor, an iron halo of thorns behind his head. When the players saw him, their chatter erupted. "Blue Daddy's here. Salvation has come," one crowed. "Is that the legendary Commander Calgar?" another cried. "Quick, fetch the stretcher team," another joked. "When will you all drop your prejudice against the ICU war god?" someone else teased. Xiaopeng's lips twitched at their antics. "At least act like this is serious," he muttered. "We're in the middle of a story event." The players fell quiet at that, remembering how much they'd worked to earn the guide's favors. "Welcome to Macragge," Calgar said, surveying the assembly. "Why are you with Xenos?" Calgar was moderate by Ultramarine standards on dealing with Xenos. Had he been more radical, the meeting would have ended before it began. "I am Archmagos Belisarius Call of Mars," Kor said, stepping forward. "I have come for the Lord of the Ultramarines." "I do not know you," Calgar replied coldly. "I have summoned no priests from Mars." "Error," Kor responded in a mechanical voice, correcting Calgar. "The Lord of Ultramar is Robout Guilliman, and I act at his command." "Think carefully about your words," Calgar warned, eyes narrowing. "Jest about our Gene-Father and consider the consequences." "I come by Robout Guilliman's command. Take me to him," Kor said bluntly. "We have come for Robout Guilliman. Escort us to him." Celestine moved to speak, but Calgar cut in. "I will not allow harm to come to the Primarch. Your demand is unreasonable." "You have two choices," he continued. "Stay and help Macragge repel the invaders, or leave." Chief Librarian Tigurius stepped forward. "Sir, before the chaos invaded Macragge, I dreamed," he said. "Those dreams are the Emperor's warnings. Perhaps you should hear them before you decide." Calgar suppressed his impatience and let Tigurius speak. The librarian described a planet and a gigantic gate bound in chains. A monstrous hand had struck the gate and shattered its bonds. From the rift poured countless beasts that overran the world. From the broken gate, an iron bird of gears had fled, sword clutched in metallic talons, and flown toward Ultramar. Behind the shattered portal watched a terrible eye, and as the iron bird neared, a bloody-toothed maw opened that seemed ready to devour all. Tigurius used the vision to warn of the chaos invasion and explained how he had anticipated the assault and the fleet's movements, why Ultramar had managed to hold long enough for reinforcements to arrive. "I will vouch for them, sir," Tigurius concluded. While Calgar hesitated, Greyfax stepped forward. "I also vouch in the name of the Imperial Inquisition. If Carr harbors ulterior motives, I will not hesitate to execute him, but before that, grant him a measure of trust." Celestine prepared to add her voice when Calgar finally relented. "All right," he said grudgingly. "Since you insist, I will allow you into the sanctuary, but if I discover any ill intent from any of you, you will all pay the price." He turned then to Qin Yun. "Before you enter the sanctuary, tell me, who are you? P.S. There's one more chapter, but it's still being revised for typos, so it will be a bit late." Facing Commander Calgar's question, Qin Yun replied evenly. "I am the spokesman for the Emperor's will. You may call me guide." "You're not sanguineous?" Commander Calgar frowned. No wonder he asked. The resemblance was unnerving. Qin Yun shook his head. "I'm not." Calgar studied him a moment longer and realized the face did not match the images of sanguineous. He dropped the subject and led them toward the Primarch sanctuary. "Come, I'll take you to the Primarch." On the way, Grand Master Woldays of the Grey Knights' Third Brotherhood joined the procession. Calgar had summoned him. He clearly did not fully trust Qin Yun and the others. The players watched the Grey Knights with quick, whispered commentary over their comms. Funny, irreverent, unconcerned, the kind of banter soldiers use when nervous. They entered the Primarch Hall together. The chamber was like a vaulted tomb. Marble columns soaring to a dome of stained glass and obsidian, murals celebrating Guilliman's victories. Guilliman sat slumped on an exquisite throne, eyes closed, the wound at his throat a dark, jeweled stain. His greatsword, the Emperor's own blade, rested across his knees. Beside the throne, a stasis machine hummed, bathing the Primarch in an ethereal, frozen light that held him forever one heartbeat from death. The pilgrims approached the throne. Kor's auto-reliquary followed them obediently. "Is this the blue sun in the heart of Ultramar?" one player jibed over comms. "You're weird," another replied. "Stop trying to eat the general's loyal orange." "Why didn't they put Horus into a stasis field after he was wounded on Davin, instead of taking him to that temple?" someone asked. "Don't ask. Ahriman wouldn't have allowed it," another shot back. "Or the Chaos Gods, or the Black Library." "Heretic," someone cried, half laughing. The banter was graceless and inappropriate among the solemn ranks. Calgar's jaw tightened. If not for the living saint declaring them God-chosen, he would have tossed them out. "Now tell me why you must see the Primarch," he demanded, turning to Kor. Having seen Guilliman, Kor no longer concealed his purpose. Years before Guilliman was struck down by Fulgrim, Kor had been summoned and given a secret commission. Task 1. Recover the original primogenitor and forge a new class of warriors, an elite that could enforce the Codex Astartes, smaller and more dependable than the old legions, yet strong enough to shoulder the Imperium's burdens. The rebellion had shown the danger of vast legions. Guilliman wanted a different solution. Task 2. Guard against the insidious influence of the warp. Horus had been ambushed by a warp-infused weapon and slipped into corruption on Davin. Guilliman himself had nearly fallen when Ko-Farlan of the Word-Bearers stabbed him with a warp dagger at Kalth. To cut such risks off, Guilliman had prepared two things: a stasis device to keep him from being sent helplessly into the service of some dark god, and equipment to purge warp taint. Without Guilliman's protection, Kor had struggled for resources and progressed slowly. Only recently had he finally completed the Armor of Fate. Now all that remained was to clothe Guilliman in that armor and revive him. A stunned silence fell over the hall. Greyfax and Emeric stared as if struck. They had known Kor had come to Macragge for something major. This was more than either had imagined. Chief Librarian Tigurius's face lit with a dangerous, almost hopeful excitement. Bringing the Lord of Ultramar back would change everything for the fractured Imperium. Yvraine stepped forward, pale and serious. "This is why I am here," she said. "I am the god chosen of the Death God. To return a Primarch, Kor's craft is necessary, but not sufficient. The power of the God of Death is required, and to revive Guilliman, we must first let him die." At those words, Calgar's face broke into stunned outrage. "An alien? You would jokingly." "While I am here, none of you may touch the Primarch," Yvraine said quietly. Woldays moved to Calgar's side. Greyfax and Emeric also formed a tight ring. The Ultramarines raised their weapons, muzzles trained on Qin Yun, Kor, and the handful of Death Guard present. Calgar kept his eyes on the Eldari, suspicious of their calm. If they truly were God-chosen, why watch without raising a hand while their lord's fate was debated? Celestine stepped forward, radiant and implacable. "We do this only to bring him back. Give us your trust," she implored, then nodded toward Qin Yun. "This is the Emperor's will." The guide received the Emperor's guidance and came to aid us. Tigurius walked to Kor's side and met Calgar's gaze. "Trust him," he said simply. "His threads of fate are bound to the Primarch." Calgar opened his mouth to protest, but an alarm cut him off. The dome of the temple shuddered as a sky-blue Thunderhawk gunship, trailing black smoke, crashed through the glass and plummeted into the plaza. Before anyone could react, its assault ramp slammed open, and Chaos Space Marines poured out, Black Legion, rifles firing, bolters spitting death into the gathered loyalists. "Orbital station down," a panicked report crackled over Calgar's Vox. "Enemy infiltrators, evac teams compromised. They came aboard Thunderhawks bound for Macragge City." Explosions detonated in rapid succession. Hell Talons broke the air defenses, and more Chaos forces fell into the sanctuary. A warp rift tore open above the ruined plaza, and something beautiful and terrible stepped through, graceful, horrifying, wearing a carved mask. "The masked dancer," Yvraine breathed. Faces tightened. The masked dancer, once Slanesh's favorite handmaiden and dancer, had been cast out, cursed to dance forever for her betrayal. Her movement was exquisite and deadly, her beauty ensnared the mind. The dance lapped at the edges of sanity. Soldiers and players alike faltered under its pull. Some rooted to the spot, eyes glazed, captivated. Only the War Master and Zhang Ge remained unmoved. The War Master with iron will, Zhang Ji because he was a Culexus assassin, immune to the warp. Qin Yun acted first. Spear in one hand, the holy judgment blade in the other, he charged the masked dancer to cut her down before her performance undid the loyalists. The masked dancer answered with a flashing blade. Her swordplay was serpentine and merciless. Their clash was a strange, terrible ballet. Celestine lit her blade and intoned a hymn as she tore into the chaos ranks. Emeric led Black Templars into a brutal countercharge. Woldes barked orders and riddled the enemy with bolter fire. Kor did not join the fighting. His pace was urgent, deliberate as a machine. He moved straight for Guilliman's throne with the auto-reliquary. Tigurius, the tech guard, and several death guard formed a protective cordon around him. The reliquary seated itself and unfolded. Its inner mechanisms whirred. Layers of metal withdrew to reveal a set of sky-blue power armor, exquisitely formed. Kor's mechanical arm extended and began to draw the armor around the Primarch. "No!" Calgar screamed over the gunfire. He fought to break free of the surrounding chaos, to reach Guilliman's side. "In the Emperor's name, Brother Tigurius, stop him!" Tigurius shook his head, the look on his face immovable. "I cannot. This is our only chance." Calgar's fury was helpless. Enemy forces pinned him down. The auto-reliquary closed, locking the armor around Guilliman's inert form. Yvraine leapt forward, a sudden, clean motion. She severed the stasis field cables and then poured the power of the Death God through the Primarch, unmaking the frozen hold that had kept him suspended. The act killed him outright and released him. Chaos answered with vengeance. Hell Talons slammed the sanctuary into ruin. Black Legion, Iron Lords, Midnight Lords, Alpha Legion. Names and faces crawled from the rift in an endless tide. Ultramarines fell under relentless fire. Even Terminators were torn to pieces beneath the onslaught. Then the auto-reliquary finished its cycle. The machine chimed, a bright, pure note that cut over the battlefield like a blade, and a voice, reverent and mechanical, intoned praise for the Omnissiah. The gears clicked, petals of metal peeling back. Guilliman, pale and terrible, opened his eyes. The presence in that chamber was immediate, like a storm rolling over the field. His mind, vast and disciplined, snapped him straight to understanding, assessing the chaos in an instant. Fury flared behind his gaze. The Emperor's sword ignited in his hands. No sooner had he risen than a Khorne berserker, bloody, axe raised, plunged forward through the tearing ranks, aiming at the Primarch's head. In the madman's mind, the Blood God demanded a trophy. 84. The era of the Primarchs is over. Here it comes, the classic famous scene. Quick, take photos, record video. This historic moment must go on the official forum. Among Khorne's followers, this one has to be the bravest. What's his name to have such courage? Before you post it, send it to Old 13 first. Wow, you're merciless. Old 13 will be devastated. Khorne, warrior, I am willing to accept your blessing. Warrior, no, you are not worthy. You guys, have you gone mad? You want Khorne to accept a blessing and say he's not worthy? The players who had been fighting until now were exhausted, wounded, and drenched in blood, but none of that dampened their excitement. If this scene weren't recorded, it would be a tragedy. Through their lenses, the scarlet-armored Khorne berserker leapt and charged Guilliman, a lone warrior throwing himself at a god of destruction. Guilliman moved. His flaming sword carved a phantom arc through the air. The proud berserker was cleaved in half at the waist, and both halves were hurled with terrible force across the hall. Only Qin Yun and the death cultists present saw the strike in full. Thousand Faces, the death god's chosen champion, and Yvraine, the daughter of shadows who had taken refuge in Gomorrah, all wore shocked expressions. They had studied the path of the warrior and the art of slaughter to its depths, only to discover a bitter truth. All killing techniques were meaningless before absolute speed and power. The Primarch moved faster than the eye could track. Even they could only catch after images. No wonder the human emperor had been able to launch the Great Crusade with the Primarchs at his side and build an empire in 2 centuries. If not for the Horus heresy, the Primarchs could have made ruling the galaxy almost inevitable. They were demigods on Holy Terra. The sound of a body hitting stone broke the silence. Kill him. A grotesque sorcerer in bone-spiked armor waved his staff and gave the command. Chaos Space Marines surged forward, firing plasma and melta, willing to pay any price to take Guilliman. Several sorcerers began chanting ancient, corrupt invocations, drawing on the warp to summon demons. Before the assault on the Primarch's temple, the Chaos faction had sacrificed the tens of thousands of Imperial captives they'd taken. One reason Masked Dancer and her handmaidens had managed to breach Holy Terra. As the sorcerers chanted, the blood sacrifices were put to grim use. The sky tore open and poured paradoxical light. Unclean energy spilled through the rift. The great hall trembled. Pillars cracked and the dome shattered, sending chunks of masonry raining down. Shadows moved across the temple, darkness seeping along the walls to devour form and swallow light. The expanding shadows shrieked like wind through skeletal teeth. Hideous demons took shape before the eyes of the defenders. Qin Yun spun his spear and stabbed at Masked Dancer, forcing her back. He beat his wings and rose. "Protect your loyal followers, human emperor," he whispered. A golden radiance erupted. A rising, miniature sun bloomed, and the forming demons shrieked as if burned. The light changed to a rain of gold that showered across the entire Hera fortress. With the warp rift open, the veil between Holy Terra and the Immaterium had been torn. The demonic summoning had succeeded, but the rift also made possible something else. The Emperor's blessing poured through, and Qin Yun received it. Normally, such a massive intercession would require unimaginable power. With the warp rift, the cost was small. As the golden light fell, the exhausted loyalists felt power flood into them. Fatigue vanished, replaced by vitality. Fear evaporated, blood boiled, and courage rose from within. Weapons were blessed too. Damage doubled against demons, and crits landed with terrifying ease. As expected of the best healer, Guide is forever awesome, Zhongge shouted, exhilarated. If this keeps up and we get resurrections later, the warp will be nothing. Old Bird nodded. Reminds me of Anduin Rin. The Queen scored badly at first, then used a Holy Light ultimate, and they all came back. Shi Qi Lang lazily unleashed a bolt of lightning that sent charging Chaos Marines flying. We have to work. The harder the players fight, the faster Guide gets stronger. Earlier he could only handle mutants, someone laughed. Now he's swinging with a greater daemon of corn and casting massive AoE buffs. Nurturing a living saint, that's on us. Ningba Ren shouted. For feeding Guide, charge! That's called support, the War Master corrected. Careful, Guide might zap you. Qin Yun grimaced inwardly. They schemed about him openly. He'd send these schemers to the frontier someday, assign them quests so they'd be grateful instead of resentful. Guilliman looked at Qin Yun with something like surprise. How many changes had occurred in his long slumber? Why did this man resemble his brothers so much? And how did he perform miracles? So many questions crowded Guilliman's mind, but there was no time for explanations now. The battle demanded full attention. Guilliman's eyes burned. He charged with the Emperor's sword. Bolter volleys slammed against his armor, but the invulnerable plating held. With a roar of pure rage, he struck into the enemy ranks. The Emperor's sword sheared a berserker's axe in two and split a man's torso, crimson sprayed. A fist in the gauntlets of Ultramar struck a Chaos Terminator and sent the traitor sailing like a cannonball, shredding marble pillars before his armored body exploded on the ground. Every Guilliman blow came with lightning speed. The traitors, gifts of the Emperor and corrupt blessings aside, could not follow his motions. He moved through them like a tiger among sheep. Where he passed, armored traitors became chunks of meat and scrap, the process terrifyingly brief. Is this the strength of a Primarch? The War Master breathed, shocked. He'd worked hard to kill a single enemy. Guilliman cut a swath through them as if playing a hack-and-slash game. No one could get near him. Even those who managed to counterattack only bounced off the Primarch's armor of fate or saw their blades shatter. Guilliman isn't even the fiercest in combat. What would the lion be like? The bald donkey muttered, then tossed a melt-a-bomb, yelling, "Fire in the hole!" The lion will be resurrected, but he's old now. I doubt he'll be as strong as Guilliman, the bald donkey added. Shi Chi Lang clenched his fist. A Chaos Marine's helmet caved and the skull beneath turned to pulp. The War Master disagreed. Lionel Johnson drove away and ascended Angron. How could he not match Gilliman? Witnessing the Primarch's invincible might and bolstered by Qin Yun's blessing, the Imperial loyalists surged forward with renewed ferocity. Commander Calgar charged beside his Primarch, roaring, his enormous power fists, with underslung bolters jokingly called Titan Slayers, smashing Terminators and shredding foes with an avalanche of rounds. He repented his previous recklessness and, spurred by guilt, unleashed wrath on the traitors with redoubled fury. Celestine hummed a holy hymn and cut down enemies while watching Gilliman. As a faithful worshipper, she felt a long-held wish fulfilled. A demigod of the Emperor had returned to lead humanity's armies against the encroaching dark. Around her, the sisters followed. "Thank you," Celestine prayed to the God Emperor. "Thank you for sending him back to us, my Emperor. How are we worthy of this love?" Faith burned in her eyes as she raised her flaming sword and struck in the Emperor's name. Greyfax fired relentlessly, downing heretics from all directions. "I was wrong," she confessed. "You and the guide are both expressions of the Emperor's will. I was foolish." "Vigilance is not a sin," Celestine replied without offense. "Your loyalty is proven." Amaric and the others watched with excitement. The return of a Primarch had turned the tide and could decide the battle. Grand Master Woldays of the Grey Knights impaled a spindle-bodied demon with his halberd and cleaved a blood-and-smoke hound, while reinforcements from across the fortress converged. "Kill the sorcerers," Woldays ordered, pointing at the Chaos spellcasters. "They're anchor points. If we don't cut them down, the demons will keep coming." Qin Yun, having unleashed his large-scale blessings, held his war spear and the Holy Judgment Blade and again faced the masked dancer. Thousand Faces, Yvraine and other Eldari warriors assisted from the side. They nursed a deep hatred for the masked dancer, who had corrupted the soul circuits of the Bieltan craft world and allowed countless souls to be devoured by the Prince of Pleasure. Such blood feuds do not fade. Masked Dancer danced with weapons, blending slaughter and art, dueling Qin Yun and the others alone. As the Imperial forces clawed back control of the field, more chaos fell from the sky. Boom! 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 Dozens more drop craft impacted with deafening roars. Hatches opened, and more Chaos Space Marines poured out, drawn from various legions and united in their hatred for the Imperium. From one drop pod strode a towering Chaos Warlord, flanked by 5 3-meter-tall war machines bristling with destructive weapons. Warsmith Hanso, one of the raiders who'd invaded Macragge. Hanso's gaze fell on Gilliman. "The Great Raider said the age of the Primarchs was over," he proclaimed. "I believed that then. Now, even if you've been resurrected, your head will be taken by me, Warsmith Hanso." The players' chat exploded. My goodness, is that the legendary bastard Hanso? The infamous Chaos villain who sits at a table with Aramin, Corferon, Fabius Baal, and Lucius? I got physically sick when I saw the Demonculaba back then. Isn't he arrogant? How dare he declare the Primarch era dead right in front of Gilliman? Hanso didn't live through the Great Crusade or the Horus Heresy. He hasn't felt a Primarch's power. Another spectacle. I think Hanso just qualified for Khorne's blessing. P.S. Bastard Hanso. Hansu's words stung Commander Calgar and the other Ultramarines like a slap. This bastard had the gall to declare to their faces that the age of the Primarchs was over. Such insolence, such contempt for the returning Lord of Ultramar, Robut Guilliman, was intolerable. Guilliman's eyes narrowed. His voice was cool and mocking. "You say the age of Primarchs is over?" Hansu raised his battle axe and took a fighting stance. "Cadia has fallen. The Imperium's demise is certain. You change nothing with words. How about I simply take your head and end your suffering?" Qin Yun, embroiled in the bloody melee, glanced over at Hanso more than once. A veteran of Warhammer lore, he recognized the name and the face. Hanso was the first mixed-blood Chaos Space Marine in history, one of the warsmiths of the 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors, the creator of the Daemon Kulaba, and the long-standing nemesis of Uriel Ventress, captain of the Ultramarines, 4th Company. Born of both Imperial Fists and Iron Warriors' gene seed, he had been branded a bastard and despised by his legionaries. His origin traced back to the madness of Fabius Baal. During the Horus Heresy, Baal murdered the Iron Warrior's apothecary Salaka and fused Salaka's gene seed with that taken from Captain Felix Cassander of the Imperial Fists. A laboratory accident contaminated the hybrid container. The only word left legible on it was Hanso. The warrior, who was grown from that tainted stock, inherited a life of scorn, but also of ruthless talent. Hanso rose through the ranks by sheer ferocity and cunning, becoming one of the 3 champions under warsmith Barban Falk. Barban Falk was a legend of the Iron Warriors, a great crusade veteran who had lived through the Horus Heresy and the Long War after it. He had overseen the construction of the Adeptus Mechanicus Fortress, Heart of Hydra, and, by Abaddon's command on the eve of the 13th Black Crusade, had led the raid that plundered the Imperial Fist's gene seed stored there. The campaign ended in Barban's ascension to Daemon Princehood, and he named Hanso his successor before the warp claimed him. The other 2 champions under Falk had fallen at Heart of Hydra. Hanso took up Falk's mantle, delivered what he was supposed to Abaddon, and secretly kept a portion of the gene seed. With the Dark Mechanicum's help, he developed the Daemonculaba, a monstrous production system in which living women, reduced to tool humans, were fixed to machines, fed nutrient fluids laced with gene seed fragments, and subjected to warp-charged catheter infusions to catalyze mutation. Teen recruits were forcibly implanted into these machines' wombs and stomachs. The warp-saturated fluids and gene seed matter accelerated grotesque growths until the new Marines emerged, skinless, malformed. The skin of living humans was flayed and grafted onto the successful creations. Those who failed the unholy inspections were disposed of, their corpses washing away in the sewers as the skinless horrors. Uriel Ventress later destroyed the Daemonculaba and nearly killed Hanso in revenge. Hanso brooded on that defeat. He had launched the first Ultramar War in fury, but at Calth his force had been shattered. An Imperial spirit, Ventanus, a hero who had died on Calth, manifested as a cursed warrior and turned the tide against Hanso. The Chaos Champion was driven to feign death, hiding on Calth until he finally stole a ship to flee. That humiliation burned. When Abaddon next called for a new invasion of Ultramar, Hanso accepted without hesitation. A jagged, whip-sharp laugh split the air. Cold gathered in the shadows and twisted into a demonic silhouette. Makar the Reborn, Woldes breathed, recognizing the daemon's name at once. Makar had once been Malak Cartho, a dark apostle of the Word-Bearers and a commander at the Battle of Calth. For the atrocities he committed there, the ruinous powers had blessed him with demonhood, only for him to be eviscerated by Ventanus and cast from being. The expansion of the Eye of Terror and the rage of the warp storms had scattered and sustained the remnants of his essence long enough for him to return, and now he stood before the Ultramarines with hatred burning in his crimson eyes. The livestream and comm chatter around the battlefield erupted. Players and onlookers were stunned. Holy moly, a Daemon Prince fragment actually showed up. Makar the Reborn? No, Makar the Disgraceful, more like. Take pictures, we have to remember this. Guan Bao, fiddling with a comm feed, impersonated the demon in a ridiculous, exaggerated voice and launched into a comic monologue. This time I won't lose again, he mimicked. Do you know how it hurts when Brother Drag cuts you? You don't. Do you know how fast the second captain's blade is? You don't. Do you know how hard Commander Calgar's fists are? You don't. Do you know how terrifying Mephiston's psychic powers are? You don't know that either. But I know. All of them knocked me down. Laughter broke out among the viewers. Makar did not hear their jests the way a human would, but he tasted contempt and humiliation in the warp. His form trembled with fury. Today you will pay, he snarled. At that, the battle escalated. Hell talons screamed through the sky while warp-torn rifts opened the earth as blood sacrifice rituals erupted. Daemons poured from those tears in reality, and legions of Chaos Space Marines swarmed, surrounding the temple. If the Primarch had not been present, such a force might have razed Macragge entirely. Gilliman's eyes swept over the tide of enemies. Then he advanced, sword in hand, his blade the Emperor's chosen weapon. A daemon leapt for him. Gilliman's swing seared it into ash, its soul extinguished so utterly that it could never be reborn. Makar's lids flickered. The sword in the Primarch's hand burned with a power rivaling the most feared relics of the warp. For the denizens of the warp, there is a cruel calculus. Only those who inspire overwhelming fear and despair are of worth. When that fear is absent, a daemon is diminished, like the Lord Samus had once found when the proud Shadowmoon Wolf's Loken stopped trembling before it. Guilliman moved through the Chaos ranks as if there were nothing to stop him. Each strike of the Emperor's sword sent showers of severed limbs and shredded armor scattering. The gauntlet of the Warden roared, smashing foes into pulp. Hanso watched his champions fall like cut grass and could no longer hold his contemptuous composure. He advanced, flanked by 5 enormous war automatons of his own making, warlike constructs forged in the Eye of Terror and modeled after Perturabo's iron constructs. He'd learned from defeat. He had come prepared with engines capable of shearing through even veteran Chaos Space Marines. What Hanso had not prepared for was a Primarch. In moments, the tide turned. Guilliman bisected one war robot in a single sweep. Another was hurled into scrap by a gauntleted barrage. The remaining 3 were hewn into burning wreckage as rufters cut fruit, destroyed before they could mount a meaningful counterattack. Hanso swung his axe, but Guilliman kicked him like a battering ram. Hanso flew through the temple, smashing pillars and crashing into marble. Pain lanced his chest. His breastplate was shattered, and jagged shards were driven into his flesh. He could feel ribs grinding. His face drained of blood. The truth finally sank in. A Primarch was a thing beyond ordinary champions. Only the mightiest greater daemons, backed by the gods themselves, could hope to stand. "Lock onto my coordinates and teleport me back," Hanso rasped into his comms. He had been a fool to come down to the surface at all. Makar took his chance and launched himself at Guilliman with a strangled, otherworldly howl. The Primarch barely deigned to look. He stepped in and drove the Emperor's sword through the daemon's twisted torso. The blade flared and immolated the daemon's essence. Pain and fury ripped through Makar as fire ate him whole. "This is for Kalth," Guilliman said, drawing the blade free slowly. "Vengeance for those you slaughtered. Your dead is called in, Malak Kartho." Makar's scream ended in nothing. His form collapsed into ash on the wind. Guilliman's gaze swept the battlefield again, then paused on a new figure, the masked dancer, an exile known for having angered the Prince of Pleasure. The Primarch tightened his grip on the Emperor's sword and advanced toward that next challenge. Guilliman ran for the masked dancer. Slaanesh acolytes leapt to intercept him, but he sliced them down one by one with the Emperor's sword. Golden flames consumed their bodies and souls, reducing them to ashes and denying them even a return to Slaanesh's domain to revive. As the Primarch, sword blazing, closed the distance, the masked dancer swung a bladed foot and forced Qin Yun and the others back, then fled toward the warp rift. She clearly understood the tide had turned. The Primarch's resurrection was inevitable. With so many enemies bearing down on her, one mistake would mean death. If Guilliman finished her with the Emperor's blade, even the Prince of Pleasure could not save her. There was no point in taking that risk. Guilliman watched her retreat with a long, weary sigh. These daemons were cunning. The moment they saw him with the Emperor's sword, they turned and fled, refusing to stand and fight. Hansu, collapsed in the ruins, went pale as the Loyalists approached. Before the first bolter round could hit him, a teleportation flare swallowed him. When the light faded, Hanso was aboard his warship in orbit, just barely escaped. Otherwise, he would have been left on Macragge to rot. One daemon prince had been cut down. The greater daemon of Slaanesh and the Chaos Warlord had fled, and the Chaos minions who saw it were stricken with a nameless horror. The reversal had been so sudden. Moments before they had ridden high, confident of victory. Now they crumpled like a cliff face, desperate to get away. Qin Yun charged into the mob, thrusting his spear and slashing with the Holy Judgment Blade, leaving a trail of corpses. The players roared and followed him into the slaughter. "In the name of the moon, I will punish you," someone shouted. Ningba Ren smashed an enemy's skull with a captured power hammer. Zhong Ge, with the Culexus assassin's unique abilities, harvested daemons with grim efficiency. The other players pressed in close, anxious to secure kills. Every corpse was contribution points and honor points. On the other flank, Grandmaster Woldays and his Grey Knights handled the surviving Chaos Sorcerers. The sorcerers unleashed black flame and howling thunder, but Woldays was untroubled. He threw up a psychic shield that swallowed their assaults, then charged, halberd crackling with lightning. He swept through the traitors with banner-bearers, the halberd cleaving through Terminator armor and corrupt flesh alike. Shi Si Lang, watching nearby, gaped in envy. Is that the power of a Grey Knight's Grandmaster? When will I grow to that level? The last Chaos Sorcerer, in Terminator armor, watched his comrades fall and panicked. He barked orders for protection, but his guards were cut down by Wold's blade. The sorcerer tried to flee, chanting warp phrases to strike the Primarch, but he hadn't taken many steps before he ran straight into Guilliman. The Primarch's gaze was all killing intent. The sorcerer's voice shook as he hurled spells at him. A whoosh. Guilliman's longsword drove through the sorcerer's chest. Golden flames roared outward from the wound. No, the sorcerer rasped, his armor and flesh burning away like tinder. As the last sorcerer fell, the warp rift collapsed. Without Tzeentch's backing, the demonic forms began to detonate, expelled screaming back into the warp. The traitors had lost their last refuge. They tried to flee, but the combined onslaught of Imperial loyalists and players left none alive. Not a single Chaos soldier escaped Hera Fortress. After Qin Yun cut down the final Chaos Space Marine in his sight, a golden notification screen shimmered into being. Congratulations, experience gained, LV13, LV14 skill learned, machine spirit blessing. By blessing a machine spirit, technological constructs can operate despite minor malfunctions. Skill learned, War Aura, emits an aura that boosts morale, attack speed, and strength of allied units. Aura range expands with the user's power. Qin Yun glanced at it and hardly bothered with War Aura. He already had numerous group morale skills. War Aura would be little more than a bonus. Machine Spirit Blessing, though, was interesting. It let machines keep operating through minor faults, like a watered-down version of the orcs' "it'll work" superstition. So the Corpse Emperor had studied the orcs as well. For Adeptus Mechanicus players, this would be huge. Imperial starships reliably working without meltdown problems. A real boon. Out in space, the battlefront shifted at the same time. Relief fleets cut through the storm and arrived at Macragge. Their arrival steadied the Imperial fleet. Commander Service immediately organized a counterattack. The hunter became the hunted. Chaos ships disengaged and fled. Hanso didn't hesitate. His vessels pulled back into deep space, the Loyalist fleet in pursuit. Along the retreat, Imperial guns tore Chaos cruisers and barges apart. Debris drifted in the void. The fleeing fleet offered no coordinated resistance, only a desperate scramble to escape, and the Imperial ships obliterated nearly two-thirds of the enemy force. The remainder scattered into the warp. The Imperial Glory's combat record was spectacular. She alone tore 4 cruisers, 7 frigates, and a small battleship to pieces, hands down the Void Battlefield's MVP. Commander Service of the Ultramar Garrison Fleet stared, astonished. In all his years, he had never seen a single ship rack up such a tally. Shia Atate, I've never seen results like yours. Incredible work, he said. Shia Atai blushed at the praise. She knew it wasn't solely her skill, but the machine spirit Shieling, an emerging star god aboard the ship who had carried most of the victory. With Sealing's help, the Glory had slaughtered with deadly efficiency. With the Chaos fleet gone and the traitors on the ground annihilated, the Battle of Ultramar was over. Guilliman's resurrection rippled through the warp and drew the attention of many factions. The Dark God's servants shifted their interest from Qin Yun to Guilliman. One was merely a living saint of the Corpse Emperor, the other a true Primarch. The traitor Primarchs stirred too, eager to strike at their loyalist brother's return. Abaddon, hearing the news from the Calixis sector, was livid. He had already been planning to keep the Corpse Emperor's reach out of Holy Terra, and now had more reason to frustrate the Primarch's resurgence. He sent out additional forces, determined to stop more resumptions, but the Primarch had already been restored. How many more variables would that introduce into Abaddon's plans? He did not like the answer. After the battle, Guilliman returned alone to the temple and barred others from following. He needed time to steady himself and come to terms with what had happened. On Holy Terra, Qin Yun had Shieling upload videos and images of the fight, the void engagement, the orbital maneuvers, the defense of Hera Fortress, Guilliman's resurrection. As soon as they were posted, the forums and chat groups exploded, 999 plus messages in minutes. Player handles and chat lines flashed in a chaotic flood. Gilliman is the only son, slaughtered, all of them. Jipug. Erlongu gang, seriously? Why didn't they wait until I got an internal beta spot before opening a new expansion? Selected little alpaca of God. Ha ha ha, old 13 just broke the server again. Players vented sorrow and anger in equal measure. Why are they doing this? I didn't even get a spot. Why is the company updating so much? Don't they know how to make money? Gilliman's in the game, and I'm still on the wait list. My withdrawal is getting worse. Anyone pity me? Open a rehab club for Warhammer addicts. Business would boom. The official site's update video stirred even more noise. A few days later, a user called Pinocchio vs. Snow White posted in a group, "Did you see? Someone who missed internal beta complained straight to GW. They issued a statement." "What did they say?" someone asked. Pinocchio vs. Snow White. The official statement says Warhammer OL is a fully immersive virtual recreation developed by the Adeptus Mechanicus under proper authorization, no copyright issues, so play without worry. And they said the editorial department and senior management are on collective leave, out seeking inspiration. The group fell silent for a beat, then messages resumed, sniggering. Collective leave? Seeking inspiration? Maybe they were packaged and sent straight into the Warhammer universe. Ha ha, imagine them bawling like babies. Official certification, looks like foreign players are joining soon. A few community big names already pre-registered. Qin Yun scanned the chat, thoughtful. It seemed the Corpse Emperor had quietly settled the matter. How? He didn't know. As for GW's editors and executives, perhaps they truly had been sent off to a hive city to grind for inspiration. The image made him smile. More popularity's good, he told Geeling. It'll be easier to recruit quality soldiers. Just then, Commander Calgar came for him. Guide, the Primarch requests your presence. Since the events at the Primarch's temple, Calgar's tone toward Qin Yun had become markedly more respectful. I'll go at once, Qin Yun said, standing. He would go see Gilliman first. P.S. There will be another update this afternoon. Based on my typing speed, it'll probably be around 3 or 4 p.m. I promised I'd deliver at least one chapter today. I've checked this chapter twice. If any typos remain, feel free to correct them or leave a comment, and I'll revise it later. Chapter 87, The Emperor Arrives, additional update for Alliance leader Bailu Kangyu. The Primarch received Qin Yun in a reception room that was plain and functional. A large wooden table held data crystal pillars and government documents. A neat stack of well-thumbed books sat in one corner. The Primarch rose from the chair behind the table and crossed the room to shake Qin Yun's hand. Welcome, guide, Gilliman said warmly. Sorry to have kept you waiting. You needn't apologize, Qin Yun replied evenly. I simply wanted a little more time to talk with you. After the battle, Guimon had dismissed everyone and chosen to be alone to steady himself. He was a Primarch, after all, tremendously resilient, and he had pulled himself up out of the immediate fog of loss and gloom to perform his duty as the Emperor's son. He had already met with Commander Calgar, representatives of the Eldar, the Death Guard, Woldes, the Living Saint, and others to assess the state of the Imperium. In those meetings, he had used every scrap of charm and political cunning he possessed to put people at ease, coax information from them, and conceal the turmoil he felt inside. Everyone who left him felt reassured by his sincerity and optimism. None of them saw the deep, festering grief in his eyes. The state of the Imperium appalled him: religious fanaticism, bureaucratic rot, willful ignorance. The Adeptus Mechanicus had grown reactionary. Science and reason were fading. Confusion and dread had sometimes made it hard to breathe. Grief had come close to burning him down, but he could not show it. He was a Primarch, the Emperor's son, the pillar for those who had nowhere else to look. People depended on him. That arrangement is fine, Qin Yun said, neither humble nor arrogant. By the way, has anyone ever told you resemble my brother Sanguinius? Gilliman noticed the white wings half hidden behind Qin Yun and for an instant wanted to reach out and touch them. He stilled the impulse. The man before him was not his dead brother. Many people say that, he admitted. Even the daemons say it. Qin Yun looked at him. Were you thinking of your brother? Were you hoping I might be him? Surprise and unease crossed Gilliman's face. Do you know what I was thinking? Are you reading my mind? No. Qin Yun shook his head. I do not use psychic powers on people except on prisoners or enemies with vital information. Your thoughts are so strong that, without any psychic probing, I could hear your inner voice, Gieleman said with a breath of relief. I suppose I must learn to guard my mind better. You're not wrong, Qin Yun agreed. When you came in, for a moment I thought you were sanguineous. When I realized you weren't, a sense of loss rose in me. Qin Yun moved to the window and looked through the stained glass at the rebuilding city of Macragge. Guilliman joined him. I never imagined waking 10,000 years later, Guilliman said quietly. My memory stopped at the Battle of Thessaly. My brother drove a blade into me. I heard my son's desperate cries, and then I fell into a long sleep. When I woke, 10,000 years had passed. I failed. I failed my father. I should have focused on how to rebuild the Imperium, but in my rage, I lost my reason, and that led to the disaster of Thessaly. His voice carried wariness and an ache he rarely let show. He spoke to Qin Yun the way a man talks to a stranger who can be trusted with his darkest hours, someone who, by virtue of who he was, could be mistaken for the dead angel Guilliman still mourned. Qin Yun listened without interrupting. He knew Guilliman wanted to be heard more than he wanted consolation. My arrogance and that of my brothers and my father created what the Imperium has become, Guilliman went on. If Horus were alive now, he'd be gloating. The thing we set our hopes on has become a bloated, corrupt corpse, reason gone, hope gone. Fear, hatred, ignorance keep it breathing. I would have preferred to die at Terra than live to see this. He clenched his fist and struck the air, then let go, not daring to indulge the fury for long. He had to remain the standard bearer. Indulgence was a luxury. He fell silent, and Qin Yun laid a hand on his shoulder. Look at the people outside, Qin Yun said. They're rebuilding with spirit. In this desperate age, they haven't surrendered. They keep fighting, even when the odds are against them. Hope remains. You still have a chance to change things, and you won't stand alone. It's only a release of feelings, Guilliman said. Nothing will break a Primarch. That's good, Qin Yun said with a nod. Tell me about yourself. Guilliman met his gaze. You're full of riddles, but I can tell one thing. You carry the Emperor's aura. Otherwise, I wouldn't have spoken like this to you. I am a living saint of the God Emperor, Qin Yun said plainly. Of course I carry his aura. Guilliman shook his head. Celestine is also a living saint, but she lacks something I can't name. That's the difference between you and her. I hear you're from the Calixis sector, a frontier opened after the Great Crusade near the Ghoul Stars. Why were you there? Guilliman asked. Qin Yun had asked himself that question many times. He could not very well answer. The Emperor tossed me there on a whim. The Calixis sector is on the edge of the Imperium, he said instead. Terra's hold there is weak, and that allowed me to build strength. Do you have a quarrel with Terra? Guilliman pressed. Power corrupts, Qin Yun said. I'm pushing for educational reform in Atoma and experimenting with new technologies. To the authorities, I'm still a mutant. He lifted a hand to one wing. I don't want the state church, the Inquisition, and the Adeptus Mechanicus all ganging up on me. You are a living saint, the Emperor's chosen, as Guilliman said, emphasizing the words. But in an age this fanatical, if the Emperor himself rose up against the church, they'd call him a heretic and blast him with bolter rounds. Wouldn't I, an Amitir living saint, be roasted to a crisp by them? Qin Yun said without reverence. He added the simile mildly, maybe turned into cumin-spiced chicken wings. Guilliman was taken aback by the lack of piety and then, rarely for the Primarch, relieved. In this grim age, it was rare to find someone who spoke without worship or fear. Calgar and the others had been overawed, Celestine fanatical. The Eldar were inscrutable. My father hated religion, Guilliman said. He believed it poisoned humanity. Now he is worshipped as a god, and terrible deeds are done in his name. How ironic. If he were to wake, those clergy would be the first to scatter. Qin Yun smiled faintly. That reminds me of a joke. What joke? Guilliman asked, curious. Qin Yun told it simply. A Forge Lord and an Archbishop were boasting. The Forge Lord claimed he'd found an STC that could make a pill to bring the dead back to life. The Archbishop said the state church could travel from Holy Terra to the Eye of Terror in 10 minutes thanks to the Emperor's faith. When the Forge Lord demanded proof, The archbishop panicked and gathered his high clergy. One priest suggested a test: have the Forge Lord bring the pill. If the emperor eats it and returns, then the entire church can rush from Terra to the Eye of Terror in under 5 minutes. Gilliman took the irony in at once and relaxed into a smile. That's a good one. I will put it in my diary. Do as you like, Qin Yun said. I won't ask for royalties, but I won't refuse them either if you offer. You'll be disappointed, Gilliman said with a grin. I don't plan on giving any. They laughed together for a moment. Then Gilliman made a quiet request. Guide, may I speak to my father? Qin Yun looked troubled. I cannot summon the God Emperor by force, he said. But you can come with me to a shrine. When I receive my reward, you can call out. Perhaps he will answer. Gilliman nodded. Then let us try. Qin Yun led him to the nearest shrine. After Gilliman performed the Aquila salute, a shaft of light opened above the altar as it always did. A cherubim descended from the light carrying a huge metal box. Inside was the legendary weapon Qin Yun had acquired after completing the special mission, Resurrect Robot Gilliman. Qin Yun kept his excitement in check and motioned for Gilliman to begin. Gilliman prayed, hoping the Emperor would offer some guidance. Qin Yun had little hope. Miracles from the Golden Throne had been rare in 10,000 years. But when Gilliman finished, 1,000 voices seemed to whisper around the shrine, like a billion lips moving at once. The cherubim, which should have flown back, hovered in place. Golden light flared from its eyes, brilliant as a star and ancient as time. The automaton regarded Gilliman and spoke in a voice laden with majesty. Gilliman, my son, my instrument. An unparalleled will entered Cadia Fortress. It was so powerful and radiant it cut through the dark like a lighthouse. Anyone with even the faintest psychic sight could feel it. At that moment, Celestine was tending the suffering masses. The forces of chaos had ravaged much of Macragge. Countless people had fled their homes and taken refuge within Cadia Fortress. Cramped into hastily built shelters, they had gone days without a proper wash. Faces were streaked with grime, clothes sour with sweat and smoke. Celestine showed them no disdain. Using her influence, she procured clean water and food and distributed them personally. The twins, Eleanor and Genevieve, led the battle sisters of the Order of Our Martyred Lady to assist her. The refugees formed a long, orderly line to receive rations and water. Praise the God Emperor, they intoned as each gift was given. Celestine prayed with each hand she laid upon a head. The recipients returned her devotion with the imperial salute, voices raised in gratitude. This was precisely what she had come to do, to show the Emperor's mercy and glory to every one of his subjects. A small hand touched her wing. She turned and saw a thin boy, 8 or 9, hair knotted and unwashed, eyes large and bright with a child's blunt sincerity. Behind him clung a toddler no older than 2. How dare you disrespect a living saint? Eleanor stepped forward, servo joints of her power armor hissing. The Sister Superior's hawk gaze was enough to frighten even hardened cultists. The 2 children froze. Nearby, a woman with features like theirs went limp with fear and collapsed, sobbing. Don't scare them, Celestine said softly. She knelt to be at the boy's level and reached out to straighten his ragged clothes. Little one, what is your name? Do you need something? My name is Darak, the boy summoned his courage. Are you an angel? Celestine smiled. You could call me an angel if you like. Then can you take a message to my mum and dad? His face lit with trust. Where are they? She asked. The boy's face fell. When the bad men came, Mummy and Daddy went out to fight with the other uncles to protect us. After the battle, they never came back. Auntie says they were taken by the Emperor. Eleanor's chiseled expression softened. The other battle sisters looked on, moved. Children orphaned because their parents served the Emperor deserved tenderness. They all say you are the Emperor's angel, the boy went on. Can you tell them? Tell them I'll look after my sister, and when I grow up, I'll be as brave as they are. Celestine stroked his head. I will deliver your message. Remember, Darak, an elder brother, must protect his sister. With the living saint's promise, the boy brightened. He scooped up his sister and ran into his aunt's arms. The frightened woman embraced them both and sobbed with relief. Around them, people murmured, touched by the scene. Celestine meant to use the moment to preach the Emperor's mercy and shore up their faith. Then a premonition prickled along her spirit. She looked up toward the spires of Cadia Fortress. "My lord," she cried, and with a few quick steps she leapt, flapped her wings, and soared toward the spires. The Battle Sisters exchanged a glance and followed her without hesitation. Elsewhere in the fortress, Grandmaster Woldays of the Grey Knights and Chief Librarian Tigurius were in council over the unending demonic assaults plaguing Ultramar. Both felt the same terrible will. The psychic pressure made them step back in shock. "What a powerful will," Woldays breathed. Their psychic talents were among the finest in the galaxy. Even against Farseer prophets, they stood confident. But this presence made them feel like fireflies trying to match the sun, utterly dwarfed. "Is that the Emperor's power?" Woldays walked to a window with a clear view of Hera's summit. The source lay there. The Primarch stood beneath it. "Whatever the Primarch is doing to reach His Majesty, we must be present if the God Emperor is to bestow guidance," Tigurius said. "Then we should go at once," Woldays replied. He opened a channel to Commander Calgar, voice grave. "Chapter Master, you must attend the Primarch immediately. The God Emperor may be descending a decree." In a corner of Macragge City too, Eldrad Ulthran, Yvrain, Thousand Faces, and other members of the Eldari who had not yet departed felt that same pressure wash down toward Cadia Fortress. It was a force so vast, so absolute, it seemed capable of unmaking the galaxy itself. "This is greater than the birth of the death god incarnation," Yvrain said, pacing. She remembered Iniad's birth at the cost of Biel-Tan. Even that had not carried this scale. Has the Lord of Man grown so powerful? Thousand Faces looked worried. The Eye of Terror had loosed the Chaos Gods, yes, but now it seemed a Lord of Mankind on the Golden Throne was answering in kind. They have a Lord of Humanity, and still immature star gods besides. Is alliance with men truly in our interest? Eldrad remained calm, as he always did. "The last crone swords lie within Slaanesh's domain," he said quietly. "Either we reclaim them, or we sacrifice our people. Which is more palatable?" His words stilled the others. Sacrificing the Eldari race was unthinkable. Reclaiming the crone swords would almost certainly require humanity's aid. He reminded them of the Eldari Empire's past grandeur and eventual ruin, dominion over stars, the illusion of immortality, yet still vulnerable to an end no one expected. "If we can remove the threat of the Prince of Pleasure by any means, then what does it matter if humanity rules the galaxy for an age?" Eldrad asked. "We survive. We preserve our race and wait for the day humanity falls. Use them to take back what Slaanesh holds." Yvrain and the others had no convincing rebuttal. Hasty pride had blinded them. Eldrad's cooler judgment brought them back to a painful practicality. "We will be cautious," Yvrain promised. "We will not act to undermine mankind simply because they grow strong." Eldrad allowed himself the smallest of sighs. He lifted his gaze toward the turbulent warp sky in his vision, toward the black sun with a rim of gold. "Lord of Humanity, Dark King," he murmured to the distance, "may destiny go as it must." Inside the Emperor's shrine, a blinding light filled the chamber. Guilliman, whose psychic potential was modest compared to other Primarchs, was still one of the Emperor's sons and could feel the omnipresent psychic flow. As the flood of power increased, pain flared across him. The gilded cherubim in the shrine glowed with holy flame. Qin Yun's body flared as well. He was being used as a buffer. No vessel could bear the Emperor's full will. Without that buffer, the Lord's projection would likely scorch the souls of an entire world into fanatic automatons. The power teetered on the edge of spiraling beyond control. Save for the Chaos Gods, who could gaze upon him and parley, no mortal or greater demon could look on the Emperor without being destroyed. "Father!" Guilliman's mind and heart split. That single name carried 1,000 voices. "My last loyal son, my pride, my greatest victory, my last tool, my last hope." The words crashed through him, as if their meaning were both everything and nothing. The Emperor's attempt to communicate washed over Guilliman like a storm of impressions rather than language. Countless images assaulted his spirit. Flames, falling stars, screaming monsters from the Veil of Holy Terra. He heard prayers without number, women, men, children, old and young, all crying out for deliverance. He saw war boiling on a crimson world, soldiers dying while shouting the Emperor's name. He saw battle sisters cut down in endless waves, Astartes falling to their last breath, a homeworld besieged by alien invaders. Guilliman perceived the galaxy laid bare, so dark, so hopeless, it felt devoid of light. The weight crushed him. The suffering of so many pressed into his soul until he could not help but scream, silently. Such a burden would crush even a god, and this was the burden the father had borne for 10,000 years. Guilliman's terror sharpened into a terrible conclusion. The emperor could not contain the scope of his own power. Guilliman had no knowledge of what those millennia had truly been. The emperor was not dead, but neither had he risen fully. He seemed caught between life and death, perhaps forever, perhaps on the verge of awakening. The will had not come in a steady descent. Nothing continuously bare it. To transmit even a fraction of its content to Guilliman pushed the limit, unless millions of lives were offered up as ballast. The presence faded like a tide receding. The cherubim turned its gaze towards Celestine as she burst into the shrine, and then its light winked out like ash upon the wind. "Praise the God Emperor," Celestine intoned, offering the Aquila salute, prayer in her posture. The terrible will had ebbed. The great pressure was gone, as if it had never been. "Living saint, what did the God Emperor show you?" Eleanor's voice came from just behind her. Footsteps thundered through the cathedral as the twins, Eleanor and Genevieve, burst in with the battle sisters. Breathless, they demanded to know whether the Emperor had given any oracle. "When I arrived, the God Emperor had already departed," Celestine said, regret in her voice. "The archangel who carried his supreme will burned herself out as well." With solemn devotion, Celestine and the sisters had gathered the ashes left by the archangel. They believed those remains contained the Emperor's power, able to dispel demons and protect the faithful. No sooner had they finished their rites than Woldes, Chief Librarian Tigurius, Commander Calgar, and other Imperial heroes filed into the hall, faces anxious for news. Robut Guilliman stood like a statue, silent and motionless. The report that followed filled the room with a terror that was almost physical. Even a Primarch struggled to process so much at once. Guilliman needed time to organize the mountain of revelations. As he remained silent, all eyes turned to Qin Yun. "Guide?" Celestine asked, hope written across her face. "Did the God Emperor leave any instructions?" Qin Yun looked helpless. "You might be disappointed. I didn't hear anything." He had heard only the first phrase, the Emperor's voice intoning, "My son, my tool," before his mind had been flooded with the Emperor's power. Endless whispers and cruel visions streamed through him until, when it ended, he found himself back on Holy Terra. The Emperor had not spoken to him beyond that single utterance. "He did not leave any tasks or specific commands," Guilliman confirmed. "He revealed the state of the galaxy, the catastrophe confronting the human empire. He told them what he had seen. The Great Rift had cleaved the galaxy in two. Horrors of the warp poured through the tier. Voracious Xenos probed for prey. Innumerable human worlds were being overwhelmed. If they did not act, human civilization would be extinguished. You must return to Holy Terra as soon as possible," Qin Yun advised Guilliman. Guilliman asked why, and Qin Yun laid out his reasoning. Only from Holy Terra could the Primarch assert control over the human empire, issue orders as regent, and marshal imperial resources. First and foremost, they had to stabilize the situation. The Eye of Terror is expanding. The galaxy is split. Macragge and the 500 worlds can still see the Astronomicon, but half the galaxy has lost its guidance entirely, Qin Yun said. Abon is pushing to expand his gains and to let chaos devour the galaxy. Their prime target will be the birthplace of humanity, our solar system. Qin Yun brought up a data projection. The galaxy appeared before them, rent by the Great Rift. Vast swaths of imperial space lay dark, cut off from the Astronomicon, their worlds falling to demons and Xenos. Qin Yun zoomed in on several crucial warp nexus nodes, the external warp routes to the solar system. If those hubs were severed, mobilizing large forces would be nearly impossible. That Abaddon did not personally stop Carr from resurrecting a Primarch means he is occupied with something more important, Qin Yun observed. "The Emperor?" Celestine suggested. "Yes," Qin Yun said. "The Emperor is the linchpin of the Empire. If Holy Terra falls, even resurrecting the Primarch will be meaningless. Without the Emperor's protection, the warp will consume everything. No amount of effort will be enough unless we secure Holy Terra." Guilliman stared at the star map, solemn, then made his decision. "I will go to Holy Terra." "Guide," he asked, Will you come with me? Qin Yun shook his head. I have other matters to attend to. I will not act alongside you directly. Stopping Abaddon from destroying the solar system is only the beginning. To have a chance against chaos, we must fundamentally change the Empire's structure. If I go to Holy Terra with you, I will be tied down by politics and infighting. The time lost there will exceed what could be achieved by broader reform. Woldays countered, the pilgrimage to Holy Terra will be perilous. The Primarch's return has already attracted the attention of the Dark Gods. Guide, you can receive the Emperor's power. Traveling with the Primarch would make the journey safer. You wouldn't need to remain on Holy Terra forever. Once you arrive, you could leave to continue your work. What you say has merit, Qin Yun admitted, then composed himself. Whether I join the pilgrimage or not, I will help, but there is something I must tell you, and you must swear by your loyalty and your souls to keep it secret. They exchanged glances, and one by one pledged their oaths. The God-chosen are extensions of my will, Qin Yun revealed. Wherever they are, I can come and go. I can summon them to my side at will. That means that as long as one God-chosen is with you, it is equivalent to all of them and to me being present. The assembled veterans were visibly stunned. Is that true? Greyfax asked. Americ pointed out that Celestine could appear on many battlefields across the Empire, and Celestine herself nodded. I will send the God-chosen to act with you, Qin Yun said. When you truly need me, I will descend myself. They then discussed the route to Holy Terra and logistical arrangements for the pilgrimage. The question of a grand celebration for Guilliman's resurrection came up. Guilliman bristled at the idea. Parades and ceremonies seemed wasteful, but Qin Yun argued that the morale boost would be worth the cost. In the end, Guilliman relented and agreed to a ceremony. When the meeting broke, Qin Yun returned to his room and set the box he had earned from the mission, Special Mission, Save Robot Guilliman, on the table. The casket was forged of a dark, unknown silver. A large, double-headed eagle was embossed in the center, and arcane runes crowded its edges. Qin Yun laid his hand on the lid. A faint light ran from his palm along the patterns, tracing the runes until it pooled at the central eagle. Gears clicked within, locks released. The lid rose on its own with a soft mechanical sigh. A mist cascaded out. Resting on velvet inside was a scepter, its handle dark silver, spiral grip threads catching the light. At the top sat a double-headed eagle with a golden human skull set between the heads. The piece was heavy and solid. The skull and eagle were not mere ornaments, but made to strike. Qin Yun depressed a hidden button. A pulsing azure glow emanated from the skull as a disintegration field came online. The room filled with the tang of ionized air. This was more than a staff. It was a long-handled warhammer with a power field. One strike could fell an enemy utterly. Maybe it knows I admire Gandalf's fighting style, Qin Yun muttered. Whatever the intent, this will be my main weapon. A golden interface described the artifact. Name, Staff of Retribution, legendary. The weapon combined ancient warp techniques and power field engineering. It could amplify psychic power and serve as a brutal melee weapon. At that moment, a holographic projection of Zealing flickered into being. Master, the randomly selected 8th batch of player names is ready. 8,866 players. Qin Yun blinked. 8,866, an oddly precise number that struck him as mischievous, almost as if some capricious deity had combined the Prince of Pleasure with the Blood God. He asked to see the list. The screen scrolled names. Purge Protocol Main System. Palru's life is precious. Neutron Annihilation most efficient. Be a good person in Rimworld. King of Mountain Blade. Qin Yun snorted. Feels like they're all from PvP games. Did I poke a war criminal's nest? Shieling tilted her head like a curious sprite. Do you need adjustments? Let it be. Selection is fate, Qin Yun decided. Distribute the helmets according to this list. A short time later, Guilliman formally declared to the people, I will go to Holy Terra and begin reforms from the capital. The proclamation sent shockwaves across Ultramar. The citizens of Macragge were torn. Relieved their Primarch lived, sorrowful that he had to leave again, yet they understood. Guilliman was the Emperor's son. His duty lay with the whole Imperium, not merely with one world. Preparations for a grand ceremonial parade began in earnest. Word of Guilliman's revival radiated outward. Warbands raced through the warp toward Macragge. the Astra Militarum, the Imperial Navy, the Tech Guard, Night Houses, and Titan legions dispatched contingents. Many would join the procession to Holy Terra. The celebration's splendor also drew danger. Rumors said the Primarch of the Emperor's children, Fulgrim, had schemes to tempt Guilliman toward corruption. P.S. Chapter 3 will be a bit slower. The world of Crixus, one of Ultramar's bleak satellites, was little more than a dead, scorching goby of wind-swept sand and stone. There was no industry, no mines worth the trouble. What the planet kept was books, ancient, forbidden, dangerous texts others would not house. Knowledge could be a curse, especially when it touched the warp. The 500 worlds of Ultramar prided themselves on recording history and preserving lore, yet they were wary. So they chose desolate worlds to store what might otherwise doom the careless. Crixus was one of those worlds, a vast, regulated archive where the unwary or the curious might crack open calamity. Along the long concrete corridors, the martyr's voice crackled over loudspeakers, a steady litany drilled into everyone who worked there. Complete your duty. Knowledge carries a curse. Do not read. Do not think. Remain pious. Remain focused. Do not doubt. Do not be confused. It was a litany Tobis had known since childhood. He'd been born on Crixus and sent to work at 14, cataloging and inventorying. For decades, he arranged books, checked bindings, logged damage, and moved crates from the tarmac to the stacks. Reading was forbidden. Often, even a glance would tell him nothing. These were texts that required a scholar's training or far stranger knowledge. Tobis kept to the rules. He never asked questions. Decades of exacting duty had earned him promotions from a junior clerk to a senior archivist in the forbidden stacks. His trust from superiors came with a responsibility. Files and tomes that recorded horrors and secret histories were his to guard. He was steady, uncurious, meticulous. When the airship landed with a shipment, Tobis and his team unloaded crates and trundled them to the docks. One volume slipped free. A sudden gust, cavernous and unnatural, flung the pages open. A single paragraph caught his eye. It read, in clean, crisp script, of recent events across the stars, how the Emperor's angel and his champions had crossed half the galaxy to drag a great Primarch back, how Lucius the Eternal had been defeated, dragged into mutual destruction by valiant Imperial heroes. The entry was brief. Tobis glanced once and felt his heart lurch. He looked around. No one watched. He snatched the book and hurried the rest of the way to the stacks, sliding the volume into its labeled slot with hands that trembled. "Praise the God Emperor," he whispered then, as always, returned to prayer and the rhythm of the day. But the sentence, Lucius the Eternal, lingered. At lunch, in the thin monotony of his life, Tobis read the fragment over again. Stories were small diversions in an otherwise ordered life. He admired the tale of imperial victory. He didn't know, or care much, who Lucius might have been. That night, in the cramped communal dormitory, he washed, prayed, and slept. He dreamed. The dream tore him down into a vivid, gutting hell. A hideous, swift monster, blade flashing like a nightmare's phantom, slaughtered living people, reducing bodies to screaming heads. When the frenzy stilled, the thing turned and fixed Tobis with a gaze. "I am Lucius," it said. He woke with a shout. The next day, he told himself it had been only a dream and splashed cold water across his face. For a heartbeat, in the mirror, he thought he saw a skinned, twisting countenance lining his own reflection. He spun and found only tiles and steam. Fatigue, he decided, but the fatigue did not lift. Night after night, the nightmares returned, sharper, more insistent. The face drew nearer. Each dream put the same words in his ears. "I am Lucius. I am Lucius." On the 6th night, the thing stood before him in the dream and repeated it word by word. Then the face multiplied, twisted, inhuman mouths and staring eyes, swarming and devouring him. Tobis screamed in his sleep. His doormates gathered at the noise, then recoiled. He opened his eyes, and they were nothing like before. His pupils black as spilled ink, no sclera, his mouth spilling black blood. A guttural, alien sound came from deep inside him. Terror scattered the kind-hearted roommates. The transformation was obscene. Flesh rotted and reshaped, pink skin darkened through red into a tar-black sheen like an insect's carapace. Bones snapped and reformed into sharpened spikes. Wet, tearing sounds filled the room as he contorted, ruptured, and reassembled. Limbs burst into being and a weapon, made of something like shadow and coagulated blood, materialized in his grasp. Where Tobus had been, only a creature remained. Lucius had been reborn from the clerk's body. Tobus's face, frozen in a mask of horror and pain, collapsed into a new scream and became one of many wailing faces on an instrument known as the wailing armor, an obscene trophy to the thing's rebirth. Enforcers arrived in plated armor, lasers and flamers at the ready. "Open fire!" shouted an officer. Salvos of coherent beams cut the air, but Lucius danced through them, impossible and swift. By the time the garrison reinforcements reached the dormitory, the creature had gone. The room was a slaughterhouse, scattered limbs, pools of blackened blood. While Crixus's enforcement units combed the wreckage, their quarry had already fled, stowed in the hold of a food transport ship bound for the stars. Lucius found a fragment of clarity amid the flood of new, violent memories. An image of the man who had once killed him, seen in a propaganda reel about Macragge. He didn't know how that man had survived. He only knew the humiliation and the old burning need for vengeance flamed new. He swore in a cold, animal voice that he would find the killer and make him understand despair and pain. Far from Crixus on Macragge, the city was in high celebration. The War Master sneezed behind the guide, and the men around him jeered and teased in the holiday ease. The grand parade rolled down the avenue from the Titan Gate to Cadia Fortress. Thousands of war engines, legions of Astra Militarum, arrayed knights, and towering titans passing in immaculate order. The city's citizens gathered in every square to cheer. The noise of millions merged into praise for Guilliman and Qin Yun and the returning heroes of the human empire. On the reviewing stand, Guilliman stood beside Qin Yun as the parade ended. The governor of Connaught approached and with pomp offered Guilliman a carved golden laurel wreath. Guilliman was about to accept when Qin Yun stopped him with a touch and a look. Something in the wreath felt wrong. Before the ceremony, a group of players, ambitious operatives hungry for recognition, had investigated a cabal of the city's elite, many of them old Warhammer devotees. They found Slaanesh taint among the ranks, over a dozen powerful figures corrupted. The players brought proof to Qin Yun, who passed it to Woldays and others. The corrupted were rounded up and executed. But Fulgrim, still scheming, had one last hand to play, reaching even to a planet governor's office. Qin Yun's hands were deft. He stepped forward, stopping the ceremony. "Don't be fooled," he said, voice flat, and eyed the governor with contempt. Woldays moved in and burned an exorcism seal across the man's skin. The governor convulsed and twisted, his form unraveling to reveal a scaled, serpentine hideousness, an avatar shaped by Fulgrim. Guilliman's face hardened at the sight. Fulgrim, exposed, sneered through the warped body. "You seek revenge," he said, "but this is only an avatar, mere fragment." He tried to stand tall and cut away mockery when Qin Yun, with a smirk, made a comment that cut strangely at the demon's pride. "Fulgrim isn't as handsome as Sanguinius," he muttered in distraction. Fulgrim froze, outrage rising. Guilliman kept his cool and let Qin Yun bait the Primarch. "Sanguinius was the most handsome of all," Qin Yun said. "Even the Emperor admired him. Fulgrim's tantrums come from envy, the wings he never had." The exchange was petty but surgical. It worked. Fulgrim's fury flared. "Is that all you have? Remember Thessala," he began, but Qin Yun seized the opportunity. With a swift, precise motion, he drove a blade through the fragmented avatar and banished it back into the warp. "No!" Fulgrim screamed back in his sanctuary, the Temple of Ecstasy, as the echo of his pierced fragment reached him. Humiliated by a dozen slights and the interruption of his council, he howled at having been cut off mid-speech. He had not finished his plans. He would rather have fought Guilliman 300 times than be mocked like this. Fury flared into promise. He would come in person and make them pay. Far beyond the roaring plaza, in the dark between stars, Lucius tightened his vow. The hunter and the hunted, each reborn in their own way, set their sights on vengeance and reckoning, threads of violence beginning to tangle across the galaxy. Villains just talk too much. Qin Yun expressionlessly sheathed the holy judgment blade. Seeing Fulgrim banished in a flash of light, Guilliman's mouth curved into a smile. He knew Fulgrim's temper well. He was probably seething with anger now. "The guide's temperament is truly exemplary," Guilliman said. Guilliman decided to emulate Qin Yun. If something could upset others, don't let it upset you. Fulgrim's avatar had caused a panic when it appeared, but Qin Yun cut him down with a single strike and restored order. The cheers that followed only grew louder. Praise for Qin Yun poured in, and his faith point balance shot up as if on steroids. The celebration was grand, with many human Empire forces taking part. Aside from the brief Fulgrim incident, everything had gone nearly perfectly. People's despair had been swept away and replaced by confidence and hope. With Guilliman returned, they were certain humanity would drive out its foes and regain its former glory. After the ceremony, Shieling uploaded videos and photos to the official forum. Seeing so many players who had followed the guide to Macragge appear in the footage made the cloud-based players envious, and the players still on Atoma planet even more so. The forum filled with posts. Dora is the lord of myriad machines. I regret it. Why didn't anyone tell me I could experience the parade plot? Don't be a dog, declare war. I just got the 8th batch internal test invite and missed it like this. Boo-hoo. Peerless lion flying head punch. I haven't even logged in and you guys are playing so big. Epic. So mad, so cold. When will teleportation be available? MC Myth. Build ships. Must build ships. I will never miss any plot again. Second Empire Warmaster. Why are you all so excited? It's just an event. Young people need to calm down. Dora is the lord of myriad machines. You're not excited? Then why aren't you wearing a helmet and still using hair wax? You damn show-off. When you get back to Atoma, you'll be pierced by a light spear for at least 20 minutes. That's not right, Warmaster. Aren't you a freshman? How are you calling others young people? Second Empire Warmaster. Elders have no age limit, understand? Colonel Detch, I recognize every Chinese character, but with your combo, I recognize none. What the hell is elders have no age limit? Peach Baby is the handsomest. Gritting-teethed Jep. Pinocchio versus Snow White. Kill them all, Tup. Gilliman is the only son. Gilliman resurrected, and I still don't have an internal test slot. This world is cold. I feel no love. Mengjiao. Gilliman is the only son. Love needs to be made to be felt. Why not buy an orc-style shrine and pray every day? Mengjiao was muted for 1 hour. Gilliman is the only son. Mengjiao. Serves you right. Always driving. Qin Yun, watching quietly, muted Mengjiao and checked the official site's reservation numbers. Pre-registrations had topped 1 million, with many English-language accounts among them. The last official GW reply had broadened Warhammer OL's reach internationally. They would all be useful, he thought wryly. Conscription efficiency greatly improved. The number of beasts of burden has reached a new high. He felt a little relieved. Next, he had to urge the players to level up and increase their combat power. With territory expanded, communications were still inefficient and players were hard to manage. Qin Yun frowned. He was on Macragge and had no clear picture of Atoma planet. Sealing could only gather developments there through forum reports. If the 4th catastrophe were allowed to run wild, the galaxy would be lost. Those people would be darker than the Dark Mechanicum. Each one could turn into a Horus, shouting, "If you cannot save humanity, then let me." The thought made his head ache. Light-speed communication was glacial on a galactic scale. Messages often took decades. Astropathic links were unstable and easily tampered with. The only hope was Sealing. He would ask her to see if she could create clones like the Tyranids, one on Atoma and one on Macragge. Qin Yun closed the chat group and the Warhammer OL site. A golden interface flashed open with a new mission. Task: construct a new lighthouse. The Great Rift widens. Half of the human empire's territory is plunged into darkness. Warp storms are frequent, and the Astronomicon is unstable. The human empire needs a new method to guide ships through the warp. Sotha preserves navigation beacons left by an ancient race that once mastered faster-than-light travel. Acquire one and have Sealing analyze it to recover its technology. Reward: large amount of faith points, activation of faster-than-light fixed-point teleportation v1.0. After constructing the lighthouse, individual teleportation between player lighthouses becomes possible. Sealing can use the lighthouse and psychic power to communicate across space and distance. It's like getting a pillow when you're sleepy, Qin Yun said with a grin. He had been wrestling with how to solve faster-than-light communication for players. Unexpectedly, the Emperor had already provided a solution. No more deliberation. This was a direct order. He would get to Sotha to retrieve the lighthouse. Version 1.0? That means there's a version 2.0, he muttered. V1.0 lets individuals teleport, V2.0 would probably allow groups, and V3.0 might allow whole fleets. He looked at the task again and smiled. The future suddenly seemed brighter. The failed Webway project and 10,000 years on the Golden Throne had spawned a backup plan. Bypass the Webway and the warp for point-to-point jumps, like Mass Effect's mass relays. If successful, the Empire's military capacity would surge. The biggest weaknesses, inefficient communication and warp unpredictability, would be solved. A single signal could gather thousands of ships. The Tyranids would be forced to kneel and beg for mercy. A few days after the celebration, Woldays and his companions set out for the Calixis planet. The reports said Lucius had revived with the help of a book cataloger. The Grey Knight's library had always kept records about Lucius. Woldays knew Lucius typically resurrected on the person who killed him. But this time, the god-chosen War Master who had slain Lucius had not died. An ordinary, unrelated book cataloger had. That anomaly demanded investigation. The Grey Knights were fast. Arriving on Calixis, they began to probe immediately. The local authorities deferred to the Grey Knights' authority and allowed access to databases and archives. Woldays and his team quickly pieced the story together. He was possessed just by reading a book about the Lucius incident? Woldays frowned. When the god-chosen War Master first arrived on Macragge, he had boasted of killing Lucius, yet no one surrounding him had been affected. Why would this cataloger be possessed merely by reading an account? Perhaps the god-chosen are inherently graced by the Lord of Myriad Machines, which blocks Lucius's resurrection mechanism, one Grey Knight suggested. That's why those around the god-chosen were unharmed. As for the cataloger who died, he wasn't in the god-chosen's protective chain, another added. So when he made even the slightest connection to Lucius, he became the sacrifice for resurrection. Their explanation made a grim kind of sense. So the primary role of the god-chosen might be to block warp corruption, Woldays concluded. The other Grey Knights exchanged looks. If true, they would need to bring these living treasures along on missions to curb chaos's spread and contamination. Don't tell anyone yet, Woldays said. I want to run experiments. If this holds up, I'll inform the other Grandmasters and call a council. They nodded and set to work. On Automa Planet, in Tyrian Hive City's cathedral, the 8th batch of players logged in. Like every previous group, they stared at the vivid world, rubbed their eyes, and cheered. Some knelt before the statue of the Lord of Myriad Machines, claiming it was the Omnissiah's power that let them play such a game. Is this really virtual reality? This is insane. Look at this girl's skin. It's like it's real. Slap, pervert. The sensation of being hit is real. Love it, love it. Hey, why won't it let me log out? A player who had gotten handsy was dragged away by guards. This guy's looking for death. Where's the logout button? The cathedral buzzed. Veteran players were used to the chaos. Each batch reacted like this. Official videos were abstract, but logging into Warhammer OL delivered a 100% realistic shock. Xieling's projection, left on Automa in advance, appeared and greeted them in her dry way. Welcome to hell. After guiding the players through the opening storyline, the projection faded. That's it? No beginner's gift pack? No interface, no gift pack. Just abandon us like this? Where's the cash shop? I want to buy a Holy Judgment Blade. 999 plus damage in one hit. Warbands moved in to recruit. Many players assumed the next update would let them buy vehicles like warships and barges and begin interstellar conquest, so the scramble to recruit and band together began in earnest. Over here, Dora Guild recruiting. Any science and engineering talents? Interested in becoming an Astartes? Flesh is weak, Mechanical Ascension brothers, embrace glorious evolution. In the Spire district of Tyrian Hive City, high-ranking officials, Feng, Heidelake, Casca, and others, watched the god-chosen via drones. They coordinated tasks over the comms, training, combat challenges, deliveries to other Hive cities, everything the guide had instructed before he left. Once the warbands finished recruitment and the god-chosen were assigned, the officials breathed easier. When will the guide return? The Collin family's rebellion is getting worse. They've seized more than half of the Calixis sector, Feng said, worry thick in his voice. The Collin family's operations were powerful and their network deeply covert. Many families that had seemed loyal were actually their allies, masked as hostile factions. After the uprising, the sector government discovered Colin family members everywhere. They couldn't root out all the traitors. Intelligence had leaked. Loyalists were retreating, and territory was being lost. If this continued, the Calixis sector would become the Colin family's domain. P.S. One more chapter added, 3 chapters remaining. You want to go to Sotha? Guilliman tensed when he learned Qin Yun intended to go to Sotha. After the parade celebrations, the Primarch had planned an expedition to drive the Chaos traders out of Ultramar completely. The 500 worlds were the jewel of the Imperium and Guilliman's power base. He had to secure Ultramar before he could travel to Terra. He had wanted to invite Qin Yun to join the campaign, but Qin Yun had politely declined and proposed going to Sotha to investigate certain matters. At the mention of Sotha, Guilliman grew guarded. The world was tied to things best left unspoken. Worried I'll uncover your little secret? Qin Yun teased. Guilliman's face froze. You know, Qin Yun watched him. I know some things, but I'm not sure whether you're worried I'll find the Pharos lighthouse on Sotha or that I'll use it to trace the old Imperium Secundus. Guilliman was speechless. Not so loud, brother. That blemish was deadly. Horus had not dared to found a rival state during the Horus heresy. I actually created the Imperium Secundus. Had that been public, as Lord of Ultramar, I might have been counted among the traitors. There's no need to fear the Imperium Secundus, Qin Yun said. The more you worry, the more others will use it against you. People don't care about the truth, Guilliman sighed. They will seize on the fact I founded the Imperium Secundus to undermine my authority. Especially now, when we're about to reform the Imperium, they will stop at nothing to exploit any weakness. Guilliman pictured how the current bureaucracy had ossified. The old High Lord's Council was likely a bloated web of vested interests that drained the Imperium. That network was a festering wound. Remove it, and the whole body might hemorrhage or collapse. Power and wealth had eroded their sense of duty. Any reforms that threatened them would unite them against him. The Imperium Secundus provided the perfect pretext. Guilliman suspected they might label him a traitor and try to raise forces to destroy him. If the Emperor himself pays it no heed, why do you worry? In those circumstances, establishing the Imperium Secundus was the best option, Qin Yun said. You had lost contact with Terra. The Astronomicon was dark. Astropathic communication failed. Who could have known the truth? If I'd been there, I would have believed the Emperor had fallen. Creating the Imperium Secundus united loyalists and rallied warriors who wanted to avenge the Emperor under a new banner. Thank you for the recognition, guide, Qin Yun said. Guilliman smiled. Praise was always welcome. But we've strayed from the point. Why do you want to go to Sotha? From the intelligence I've gathered since my awakening, Sotha is now a dead rock. The Tyranids stripped its biosphere bare, Qin Yun explained. During the Second Tyrannic War, the Tyranids invaded. The Emperor's Scythe's warband garrisoned there suffered heavy losses and evacuated. The Tyranids left the planet a husk. Qin Yun continued, Doesn't Sotha still have the Pharos lighthouse? The Astronomicon can no longer penetrate the Great Rift, Guilliman said. Navigation in the Imperium Nihilus is difficult without it. Guilliman instantly grasped Qin Yun's intent. You want to activate the Pharos lighthouse and use it in the Imperium Nihilus? Yes. Qin Yun nodded. It's the only alternative we currently have. Then you may be disappointed, Guilliman warned. The Pharos lighthouse used a great deal of Xenos technology. I sent teams to study it, and they only managed to learn how to activate it. Later, the Midnight Lord invaded Ultramar to seize it, leading to the Battle of Sotha. In the end, the lighthouse was overloaded by the loyal Iron Warriors Barabas d'Antioch to disable enemy communications, and I later ordered it destroyed. Qin Yun smiled and laid out what he knew. You couldn't entirely destroy it, and that's enough. The Pharos is Necron technology. Human and Necron tech follow completely different paths, but I have a solution. Most Necron technology ultimately stems from another ancient race, the Tan. The machine spirit of the Imperial glory is an ungrown Tan. She can reverse engineer the Pharos and extract key technologies. Guilliman looked surprised. Kor and Americ mentioned a Cetan machine spirit, but I never thought she could reverse engineer technology. Qin Yun shrugged. I'm also curious. Do you tell everyone everything? Such a critical secret, and you share it so freely. Aren't you afraid you're sowing future disaster? Honesty dispels doubt. It lets us trust each other in our cooperation, avoids mutual suspicion. Qin Yun added, wasn't the Emperor's secrecy over the webway one of the causes of distrust among you, which eventually led to betrayal? Gilliman sighed, memories of the long table beneath Hera Fortress, the seat he had prepared for the Emperor and his Primarch brothers, returning like ash. They had intended to sit, speak freely, and shape humanity's future. Instead, Horus's betrayal turned it all to ruin. We argued, but we never thought it would lead to brothers slaughtering brothers and the galaxy burning. No trust survives repeated suspicion. Mutual honesty is the foundation of trust, Qin Yun said. Gilliman nodded. You've shared a secret with me, so I should tell you one too. Do you know Kor has been working on the task I set him for the last 10,000 years? Qin Yun nodded. I know. Do you know what I had him do? Forge the armor of fate for you, optimize the Astartes, and he used the Primarch stacks you gave him to create Primaris Space Marines. Gilliman's mouth twitched. Kor told you? No, the Emperor told me. Qin Yun pushed unexplained things onto the Emperor with his usual casual air. By the way, what was the secret you wanted to tell me? Qin Yun prompted. Gilliman was silent. You already know everything. What's left to say? He forced a smile. I have no secrets. The Ultramarines have no secrets. Let's talk in detail about the Primaris then. The Primaris Space Marines were the product of Kor's 10,000 years of work. He had produced many Primaris on Mars and elsewhere, waiting for Gilliman's return to Terra before awakening them to spearhead a campaign reclaiming chaos-plundered territories. Kor hadn't deployed them to defend Cadia against the Great Raider because the conditions weren't right. If Kor had revealed the Primaris publicly, the State Church, the Inquisition, and the Adeptus Mechanicus would have declared him a traitor. The day he announced them, he would likely be driven to suicide, shooting himself multiple times from behind, and the Primaris would be branded as corrupted by chaos and annihilated by fanatical tech priests. Only Gilliman, the Emperor's son, standing forward to validate them, could prevent that fate. Beyond Sotha and the Primaris, Qin Yun also discussed the god chosen with Gilliman, and they set exchange rules for contribution points and Aquila coins. Gilliman promised to find ways for the god chosen to freely obtain weapons and equipment. When their matters were settled, Qin Yun left the study. As soon as he stepped out the door, a golden mission screen flashed before him. Mission: escort Kor safely back to the Sol system. You have successfully escorted Kor to Makraj and resurrected the Primarch, but salvation lies on Terra. The Chaos Gods will not allow their return to Terra unopposed. Find a way to protect him and ensure his safe arrival on Terra. Reward: gain a large amount of faith points. Players can unlock Primaris Upgrade after reaching a certain level. Primaris Upgrade? Useful for players taking the Astartes route, Qin Yun murmured, then glanced away. Mission or not, he planned to send players to Terra with the pilgrimage team. He did not linger at Hera Fortress. He returned to the Imperial Glory in low orbit to prepare a team to go to Sotha and study the Pharos. Other players and Xiaxian stayed on Makrag for future arrangements. Master, you're finally back. As Qin Yun stepped off the landing pad, Shiling's projection flitted around him. He smiled at the lively image. Post a mission. Recruit a group of players to come to Sotha with me. Okay, Master. Shilling will post it right away. Shilling was fast. A new mission hit the players' data pads. At that moment, many members of the Emperor's Cannon Fodder Warband watched a bout in the Hera Fortress arena. The War Master, wearing only combat armor, sparred against an Eldari warrior. The Eldari moved like a ghost, astonishingly fast. The War Master held a shield in one hand and a sword in the other, a tactic he'd developed after studying his duel with Lucius. Lucius's speed and angles were impossible to match directly. The shield let him control and blunt the opponent's tempo. The Eldari's attacks struck mostly the shield, throwing off sparks, unable to break through. The War Master timed counters with his sword. Clang. The shield slammed aside an attack, and the War Master thrust. The Eldari staggered. He pressed the assault, ramming forward with the shield until the Eldari rolled away to buy distance. Before he could recover, The War Master slammed into him with brutal force, sending him crashing into the arena cage. "You win," announced Thousand Faces, the Death Guard God Chosen, calmly from outside the ring. Players exploded in praise. "Awesome! War Master is the GOAT! You beat an Eldari. Can you get any better?" The War Master allowed a small smile and looked at one of the players. "Don't worry, I can." "Show off." Shi Lang and others rolled their eyes. Americ and the Dreadnought veteran Sard watched in silence. "His improvement is remarkable," a Black Templar admitted. "The God Chosen's growth is terrifying," Americ agreed. When they first met, his skills had been far weaker. In a few days, he could already best an Eldari warrior. "Next, it's my turn." Yvraine stepped forward, challenging the War Master. She posed the question with a taunt. "Do you have the courage to face me?" Before the War Master could answer, Shi Lang and the others called from the side. "A new mission just refreshed. The guide is recruiting players to accompany him to Sotha to investigate something." 93. Emperor's Scythe. The War Master glanced at Shi Lang and his companions, then decided to finish this fight before checking the guide's mission. He tapped his shield with the flat of his sword and turned to Yvraine. "Sons of Dorn never fear a challenge." Americ and Dreadnought Sard both felt their opinion of the War Master rise. The Black Templars and the Star Realm Knights were both successors of the Imperial Fists. That line about courage struck a chord with them. Yvraine stepped into the gladiatorial pit, tall, wearing ceremonial armor and carrying a simple longsword. The War Master's face grew serious as he assumed a combat stance and fixed his gaze on her. Yvraine was striking, an almost artistic beauty, with eyes like a dark pool that seemed to read through people. She had been born on the craft world Bieltan. As a youth, she had followed the path of the dancer, dreaming of a stage life. When her psychic talent surfaced, she took the path of the seer and became a battle seer. Later, drawn by a restless streak and a savage streak of violence, she walked the path of the warrior and became an avenger. She had spent time as a pirate until an accident stranded her in Gomorrah, the Dark Eldar stronghold, where she joined a witch cult. Under the protection of Lady Malice, a powerful lieutenant of Archon Vect, she rose to become a succubus, an elite within the cult. Her finesse in combat made her a favorite. Malice even placed her in the arena alongside the gladiator queen Lilith and captives from Tyrannid, Orc, Necron, and even Titan-class opponents. In that fight, she was struck through the chest by Lilith and died in the arena. But her death earned her the blessing of the Eldar god of the dead, and she returned as one of his emissaries. The War Master advanced with shield forward, testing her. Yvraine did not rush to attack. Instead, she slipped aside. He adjusted his stance so his shield always faced her. One slip, and such an opponent could kill him in an instant. "You are very vigilant," Yvraine said, circling him, calm and unhurried. "The shield and sword combination is the best counter to fast, agile foes," the War Master replied. "Against a normal opponent, you'd have the advantage. Many enemies in this universe aren't normal," she said. Suddenly, Yvraine split into two figures, one to his left, one to his right, each swinging a blade. The War Master raised his shield to meet the blow from the right and his sword to parry the left. The clang of metal rang out. The Yvraine on the left dissolved into smoke. "A wise choice, but not enough," said the remaining Yvraine. The vanished form reappeared, whipping a low kick that snapped into the War Master's knee. He dropped to one knee before he could react. Before he could rise, Yvraine's blade was at his throat. "You lost," she said. "You were too slow," she continued. "When you dropped to your knee, you should have rolled with the motion, created space, and countered, not tried to stand up immediately." The entire exchange was over in 2 minutes. The players in the stands groaned. Their champion had been bested. But it was not a shocking result. Yvraine's history in Gomorrah and her role as an emissary of the god of the dead made her a deadly adversary. If the War Master had lost, it only confirmed her reputation. "You did well," Americ said, stepping forward to help the War Master to his feet. "Next time, you'll win for sure." Remembering Sard's observation that God Chosen loved rewards, especially relics, Americ decided to motivate the War Master. "If you can defeat that Eldar Seer, I'll let you into the Black Templar's reliquary to choose a weapon." The War Master's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Of course, Sons of Dorn don't break their oaths," Americ said. Players watching outside fell silent, stunned by the offer. A few muttered envy and disbelief. I want one too, Ningbaren said boldly as he sidled up to Amarik. Amarik looked him over. Are you also a son of Dorn? Yes, Ningbaren said, a Death Guard splinter of the Sons of Dorn. The nearby players rolled their eyes. For a small prize, you've sold all dignity. Mortarion would be ashamed to hear you talk like that, Shi Lang sneered. Amarik rested a hand on Ningbaren's shoulder. If you want to try, go ahead. If you can defeat that emissary of the God of the Dead honorably, you can also enter the reliquary and choose a reward. Grand Marshal Amarik, greetings. I am 1,000 Sons Splinter of the Sons of Dorn. Please be gracious, Shi Lang suddenly said in a slick, fawning tone, abandoning his earlier righteousness. The other players scorned him. Loud hypocrisy. If Magnus or Araman had heard, they'd be furious, Shi Lang imagined, and they quickly flocked to Amarik to introduce themselves. I am a Shadow Moon Wolves Splinter, World Eaters Splinter, Word Bearers, Alpha Arius. The arena descended into noise as players clamored for the prize. Amarik could hardly get a word in. Finally, he cut through. The first 10 God-chosen who defeated Yvrain would be allowed into the Black Templar's reliquary to select a prize. Everyone else would receive consolation rewards and medals from the chapter. After the gladiatorial diversion, the War Master, Shi Lang, and the others talked about the guide's newly released task. Are we going to Sotha? There's the Pharos lighthouse there, and the guide has Zeeling, who can analyze Necron tech. He's surely heading for the Pharos. Why does the guide do so much for the protagonist? The bald donkey grumbled. Aren't we supposed to be the protagonists? The guide pushes the plot so players aren't left waiting for years, the War Master said. The Warhammer universe spans decades. It's unreasonable to make players wait for months of in-game time. Right, the guide keeps things moving, so our efforts are rewarded. It makes the whole thing playable, Shi Lang agreed. Hai Gui of the Shadow Moon Wolves asked, Are you going? I'm not, the War Master said. I need to hone my combat skills. That Lucius will jump at the chance to humiliate me, cut me into a human stick if he gets the chance. I have to prepare. Not me either, the bald donkey said. I'm grinding favor with the Ultramarines. Maybe I'll get access to their reliquary. I'm going, Shi Lang declared, clenching his fists. I'll follow the guide and grind for favor. I'll make sure he knows I'm always there. You're courting the guide? The bald donkey mocked. Lick the guide now, and you'll have everything later. I can see it now. When Guilliman returns to Terra, he'll entrust power to the guide. When that happens, the guide will remember me. Hey, save that dramatic self-praise. There's only so much flattery one person can take. Hai Gui interrupted. Shi Lang went on fantasizing about future honors, red-faced. While the veteran players argued, someone posted the mission details to the official forum. Guilliman is the only son commented. Progress looks good. Keep it up. Dora is the Lord of Myriad Machines wrote. Old 13 finally moved on. Selected Little Alpa of God shrugged. What's to mourn? It'll be open beta anyway. MC Myth pleaded. Leave some plot for the kids. Meanwhile, Qin Yun decided to head to Sotha as well. He persuaded Carr to join and convinced an Adeptus Mechanicus fleet to provide logistics support. With Qin Yun commanding, the warp run was unusually smooth. The group arrived quickly. Once teeming with life, Sotha was now a dead world. The Tyranids had stripped the planet of all organic matter, leaving a blasted, barren rock. A damaged space station hung over the equator. When Qin Yun and the others docked, the remaining warriors of the Emperor's scythes were already aligned on the tarmac to greet them. Even knowing the warband had been nearly wiped out in the Second Tyrannic War, seeing them in person was sobering. Only 13 of the Emperor's scythes remained. Their power armor was a patchwork, pieces ground and forced to fit together from different patterns and eras. Many of the joins looked awkward, ill-fitting. The overall effect was one of desperate thrift. Brothers in misfortune, like the Lamenters, someone murmured in the comms. They're that battered. Do they not even have one full suit of armor left? It's pitiful. Even their gene seed's been corrupted. What fate awaits this warband? What can they do? They'll be rebuilt as Primaris eventually, another replied. Qin Yun checked the helmet readouts. The atmosphere was breathable, the temperature bitter but survivable. He removed his helmet and revealed his face. Chapter Master Thracian of the Emperor's Scythes stepped forward and bowed slightly. I am Thracian, Chapter Master of the Emperor's Scythes. Welcome, Saint of the Emperor. The warriors behind him echoed the salute. They had seen the footage of the Macragge ceremony and knew Qin Yun's rank. As Thracian bowed, a surge of sorrow passed through him. If not for the shameful secret that had marked them, perhaps they could have met their Gene father. As it was, they could do nothing but guard their honor as best they could. If the warband's designation had to be revoked to wipe away that stain, so be it. That, they felt, was better than continuing under suspicion and humiliation. 94. The Secret of the Imperial Scythe. Qin Yun sized up the chapter master of the Emperor's Scythes, Thracian, who stood before him. Thracian's face was weathered by wind and frost, his skin rough and crisscrossed with scars. A jagged, cross-shaped wound ran across his features. Its intersection sat over a pale, distant eye. Behind him, the remaining warriors of the Emperor's Scythes strained to stand tall, trying to present their best to the saint. They wore trophies of alien kills, bones, teeth, and faded chitinous carapaces. One warrior gripped a banner embroidered with two crossed scythes. The Second Tyrannic War had destroyed the Emperor's Scythes' homeworld and stripped them of most of their warband. They had returned with only 2 companies. After the Kraken fleet was defeated and the war ended, they refused Imperial supplies and rejected new recruits. In the brutal fights that followed, their numbers dwindled until only 13 remained. Many in the Imperium had wondered why they would refuse to rebuild or accept aid. The Emperor's Scythes never answered. Others could only watch them march toward extinction. Chapter Master Thracian, thank you for your welcome, Qin Yun said. I cannot refuse a saint, Thracian replied. Your words are the sacred will of the Emperor. Loyalty deserves reward. Tell me about Sotha, Qin Yun asked. Come this way. The station still has a strategic room operational. It will give you a clearer picture of Sotha, Thracian said, leading them inside the battered space station. Along the corridor, ordinary survivors of Sotha still served the Emperor's Scythes. Tech priests and servitors worked on makeshift repairs, sparks flying as they welded plates into place. The station bore dozens of patched-up sections, proof of scarce resources and hard necessity. They are all survivors from Sotha, Thracian explained. They came back here with us, hoping one day to be buried on their homeworld. They lingered like ghosts, desolate and waiting for a final resting place they could not return to. It feels a bit desolate, Xiaopang muttered. This isn't going to end tragically, is it? September 9th shook his head. It shouldn't. Sotha still has Tyranid sentinels, Necron constructs guarding the Pharos lighthouse, and a half-dead Tan. Where's the tragedy? You two better stop jinxing it, Little Alpaca, battle sister, warned, preventing the bad luck she feared from taking hold. Chong Tianbian pointed to a wall. Look at these. Those claw marks, Tyranid. Everyone looked and found the traces. Punctures, acid etches, teeth marks, claw scratches, evidence of bioweapons and desperate close-quarters fighting. The battle must have been brutal, someone observed. Xiaopang reached out to touch the marks, guessing how many Tyranids it had taken to make them. The strategic room's machine spirit stirred, a tired, weak hum. The equipment was old. Thinker wetware modules trembled in nutrient fluid on the walls. Indicator lights flickered. The projection unit coughed to life and outlined the shape of Sotha with captured images. The planet had been stripped bare. Former oceans were now dry basins, drainage networks, and spider-webbed mountain ranges revealed where life had been sucked away. It looked like a planetary geological model, accurate but lifeless. After the Second Tyrannic War, we have hunted those abominations without cease, Thracian said. Every time they plunder a world, they leave sentinels behind to feed coordinates and intelligence to the hive mind, Kor added from where she stood. Sotha has sentinels left by the Kraken fleet. That's our first enemy. Where is the Pharos? Kor asked in her mechanical voice. Thracian rotated the projection and illuminated an isolated mountain. The Pharos is here, beside the former watch fortress of the Emperor's Scythes. We guarded the Pharos until the swarm arrived. He recounted the old history of the chapter. The Emperor's Scythes had once been the 199th Company of the Ultramarines, the Shield-Bearers. During the Horus Heresy, with the warp torn by storms and loyalists scattered, Guilliman had entrusted Barabas d'Antioch, an exiled Iron Warrior, to restore the Pharos lighthouse, using Xenos technology to guide Imperial ships through the warp. Dantiok was a legend, a warsmith who had survived terrible campaigns, aging fast from battle and living only by the support of power armor life systems. Exiled and shamed by his Primarch Perturabo, he had sworn to finish the last duty left to him. He swore allegiance to the Emperor during the heresy, crippled traitors who sought his domain, then came to Ultramar to help Guilliman repair the Pharos. When the Pharos was lit, lost Imperial elements were guided home. Many loyal forces arrived. Among them were Primarchs whose presence shaped history. In the fighting that followed, Dantiok crushed a traitorous invasion of Sotha but died of exhaustion. Guilliman later removed the mask that had shamed him and posthumously honored him as the Pharos Guardian. The Shield Company, for its defense of Sotha, took the double scythe banner and swore the Shield Oath to guard the Pharos and Dantiok's relics. In the third founding, the company became the Emperor's Scythes. The Tyranids are humanity's great enemy, and you have done well, Qin Yun said. This is merely our duty, Thracian answered. We will go to the Pharos and reclaim it from the Xenos. Qin Yun swiped the projection away. I don't think it will take too long. Take us with you, Thracian asked. All right, change into power armor. We brought enough for you, Qin Yun replied, but his voice held a quiet gravity. A hero approaching his final song should not be made to carry unnecessary burdens. We don't need them. Our armor is fine, Thracian said. This mission will be dangerous. If a hero is to meet his end, let him do it with dignity, Qin Yun said. Archmagos Corps will outfit you with brand new power armor. You can paint the Emperor's scythes pattern on them. In the Emperor's name, I forbid you to refuse. Thracian saw something in Qin Yun's gaze, depths that seemed to hold the wisdom of worlds, and a soft sadness. After a moment, he yielded. An order in the Emperor's name must be obeyed. With Adeptus Mechanicus aid, the rearmoring went quickly. The new suits were painted with the double scythe, all ready. After preparations and a final review of the plan, Qin Yun and the others boarded a gunboat for Sotha, heading for the Emperor's Scythe's Fortress Monastery. A path from the monastery led up into the Pharos lighthouse itself. Shieling came with them. Only she could reverse-engineer Necron devices. Carr had crafted an exquisite mechanical body for her, which housed her mental avatar and allowed remote operation. Shieling danced with excitement when she received it. Qin Yun had to order her to stay close. The gunboat descended to the ruined fortress monastery. Tyranids had eaten everything, only bare stone remained. As the players moved forward, Tyranids lurked in the shadows and swarmed. They came in numbers, but the players' concentrated firepower cut them down. The creatures broke and fled back into dark corridors. Is that all these bugs have? Xiaopang crowed as he powered up his new exoskeleton, unleashing a storm of fire. Laser and bolter rounds tore through the swarm. Unlike Warmaster and Shi Si Lang, who busied themselves currying favor with different warbands, Xiaopang had stuck close to Kor, the Archmago's eager protege. After helping Kor on several jobs, she had fitted his exoskeleton with extra weaponry, some of it techniques outside standard Adeptus permissions. The price was a steady stream of his combat logs to Kor. He felt lucky. Kor had other reasons. They breached the monastery and thought they had the upper hand, until something enormous slid out of shadow. A mountain of a gene-stealer patriarch led a tide of gene-stealers, a packed wall of purebloods whose claws pulsed with rending field energy capable of shearing through armor. The Xenos had allowed the Imperial force to enter, planning to trap them within the narrow corridors and annihilate them at close quarters. The Patriarch screamed, and its brood surged like a tidal wave. "Kill for the Emperor," Xiaopang roared, spraying volleys that carved swathes out of the enemy. "Feel the power of the warp." Shi Si Lang shouted as psychic fire erupted from him, turning rushing monsters into incandescent ash. The fight turned white-hot in the cramped hallways. The Emperor's scythes themselves fought like men possessed, forming a line to surround the Patriarch. "It was you who brought the swarm to Sotha," Thracian snarled, eyes burning with vengeance. He raised his bolter and tried to fire, then froze. He didn't pull the trigger. Every other scythe's warrior stiffened the same way. Shock and shame twisted their faces. "Even the neural inhibitors aren't working?" someone gasped. "Is this the shame we must die with?" another whispered. A terrible truth spilled out. The Emperor's scythes could not fire on the gene-stealer patriarch because contaminated blood ran in their veins. The tyrannid will had insinuated itself into them, preventing them from striking the patriarch. Alas, Thracian murmured, grief choking him. Go forth, in the Emperor's name, take your revenge. Qin Yun stepped forward. Holy power flowed from him, a luminous tide that filled the hall and washed over the Emperor's scythes. The ritual was quiet and swift, but its effect was immediate. Thracian felt chains loosen. He gripped his bolter again. This time his finger tightened, then the weapon thundered. The bolter barked. Muzzle flare lit the dim hall. Rounds hammered into the patriarch's bulk. The great Xenos shrieked in pain, yellow eyes widening with confusion. How could they strike it? They seemed to ask. Kill it! Thracian shouted, and the chapter moved as one. Bang, bang, bang! The bolters of the Emperor's scythes tore the air. Bolts struck the gene-stealer patriarch and detonated, spitting flame across its armored carapace. The creature howled, rage and pain turning its charge into a savage lunge. Its yellow eyes were full of malice, an ancient malice, older than most stars, threaded with the terrible, distant intelligence of the tyrannid hive mind. That will crept at the fringes of sanity, seeking to crush and enslave the Astartes' minds. Thracian and his brothers wore suppressors to blunt that psychic influence, but even those implants could not hold back the hive mind's pressure. They were frozen, unable to fire, until Qin Yun invoked purification and blessings. The spell cut the tyrannid tendrils long enough for the Astartes to act by their own will. For the Emperor, and for Sotha! Thracian roared. Kill it! The remaining Emperor's scythes snapped on their chainswords and crashed forward. Madness and fury glittered in their eyes. They felt no pain, only purpose. One of them was seized by a massive limb amid the shrieks of alien death, neck torn, head ripped off in a spray of blood as his corpse collapsed. The others did not falter. They hacked and tore at the patriarch until it finally crashed to the ground, still and dead. With their leader slain, the gene-stealers scattered, their shrieks echoing down corridors as they fled. Thracian and his surviving brothers stared at the fallen patriarch, a grim satisfaction settling over them. They had avenged their dead. In the players' comms, Shishi Lang muttered, I didn't think Ultramarines ever showed signs of the Black Rage. How much hatred can one chapter carry? Even Xiao Pang was taken aback. The scene had shocked the rest of the group. The Emperor's scythes had been reckless to the point of self-destruction, but their assault had worked. After the fight, Thracian bowed his head to Qin Yun, gratitude in his voice. Without the Saints' help, they could never have struck that blow themselves. Then, in tired, halting words, he told Qin Yun, and through him the players, the shame the chapter had kept hidden. During the Second Tyrannic War, a Kraken fleet had assaulted the Eastern Imperium, devouring worlds along its path. Sotha lay in its way. The Emperor's scythes had resolved to die defending their home, only to discover that most of Sotha's population had already been corrupted by gene-stealers. When the Tyrannids arrived, civil war erupted. Cities turned on themselves, orbital garrisons fell into chaos, defenses were cut. Sotha was laid open and consumed. Even the chapter's gene seed had been tainted. New Astartes were born with traces of tyrannid contagion, forced to wear suppressors to resist the hive mind's control. It had been a bitter disgrace. The chapter refused imperial aid and refused to rebuild. They would not accept replacements, while their own blood might be corrupted. Instead, they swore to keep what remained of the chapter small and focus only on vengeance. They hunted tyrannid prey, seeking the patriarch who had led the invasion. They had returned here for that purpose and nothing else. You have our thanks, Saint, Thracian said. He and his remaining brothers saluted. If we survive this mission, I will tell you everything openly. Whatever judgment the Emperor decrees, we will accept. Qin Yun inclined his head and did not interfere. The players listened somberly, murmuring pity and admiration. A tragic warband, only 7 Astartes left, someone said. What happens when you neglect your home? Another replied. The home dies, and then the warband fades with it. Piange, only you could make a cuckold joke about a fallen chapter, Xiao Pang scoffed. Piange scratched his head and grinned. Look, the Emperor's scythes loved Sotha, but Sotha was already remade by the Tyrannids. They fought to protect her, but she embraced the very thing that destroyed her. The Tyranids devoured Sotha, and the Scythes spent the rest of their days in shame and vengeance. It's tragic. Stop, Xiaopang cut in, leveling a mock cannon at him. You're toxic. Don't make me shoot you mid-anecdote. All right, my bad. Piange backed off. Shi Qilang chuckled and added, imagine how shattered they felt when they learned their own gene seed was corrupted. You'd be more than a cuckold. You'd be destroyed. You two are terrible. I'm a pure love fan. I can't stand this, Xiaopang protested. Before the banter could go on, the ground shook violently. The fortress monastery trembled as if struck by some titanic blow. Stone and masonry splintered. A rain of rubble smashed across the hall. Players and Adeptus Mechanicus scattered to avoid being crushed. The shaking lasted more than 10 minutes, then suddenly ceased. When the dust settled, only Core and a handful of Mechanicus servitors remained close to Qin Yun. The rest, the players and the Emperor's scythes, had been swept away in the chaos. The once proud fortress lay in ruins, exits choked with debris. They were trapped. The ground had split wide, revealing a passage descending into darkness. Qin Yun sent several drones to scan the newly exposed tunnel. The tremor was the Necrons, Core reported after interfacing with the long-range scans. The passage led straight into the black metal labyrinth beneath the Necron lines. They've collapsed the monastery. Whatever they're doing, it's below us. Qin Yun slid into the fissure and led the small group into the underground maze. The corridors tangled like a nightmare of metal. Necron constructs attacked here and there. Qin Yun tore them apart and pushed forward with Core and the surviving Mechanicus. Along the way, he found other players, Shi Qilang, Xiaopang, and came upon bodies of fallen tech priests and Emperor's scythes who had fought to the last without fleeing. The Astartes died with weapons in their hands, dragging as many cold metal things to their graves as they could. Qin Yun paused for a silent benediction. For the Emperor, and for Sotha, someone whispered. An enraged voice echoed down a long corridor. Qin Yun hurried toward it and found the final scene in the aftermath of a duel. Thracian lay on the stone, coughing blood, his chest torn wide. Around him were the broken shells of a dozen Necron warriors. He had fought until his last strength. Qin Yun dropped to a knee and took the chapter master's hand. Thracian drew one last breath and spoke with effort. Saint, have I failed the Emperor? Will he cast me out for not being pious, for not meeting dishonor without shame? Qin Yun's voice was soft as he answered. You have not failed. You and your brothers were the Emperor's pride. Your courage has been seen. You will be welcomed in his halls. You are heroes. Relief flickered across Thracian's face. He smiled, exhaled once, and was gone. Qin Yun murmured a final benediction to himself. Around them, the players were quiet, struck by the hollow cruelty of the galaxy. Shi Qilang recorded the moment. He'd post it later, he said. Everyone should bear witness, not just those standing there. Qin Yun had thought to make a quest to recover the Astartes' bodies, but he let the idea fall away. They had died defending their world. Let them rest on the soil they loved. Perhaps one day a monument would stand on Sotha, and when the Primaris rebuilt the Emperor's Scythes chapter, this story would be carried on. Brave warriors who had given everything for the Imperium. Their lives had been marred by tragedy, but their honor remained untarnished. After leaving Thracian's side, Qin Yun pressed deeper into the labyrinth with the others. He still hoped to find Qiling. At last, they reached the core. A vast black metal matrix thrummed with energy, light pulsing along its facets. Within it, a metal construct banged against its prison, each strike rippling the matrix with psychic force. I am Zarahush, Overlord. I am a god, the living mind of this place, a voice hammered into their skulls. The imprisoned Khitan's presence radiated like a storm. There, near the matrix, stood Qiling. He ran to Qin Yun, bright with excitement. The Overlord's thrashing grew more furious. Pathetic carbon-based monkeys, you dare trespass? You insult my kin. Master, Qiling cried, nearly bouncing with joy as he clustered at Qin Yun's side. The Tan's rage flared. You lie. You serve the enemy of my kind. How dare you lead one of my kin to dishonor? Shi Qilang blinked. Why is that Khitan suddenly so worked up? PNJ snickered. Isn't it obvious? What father doesn't hate some yellow-haired suitor? Even if Zarahush isn't Qiling's father. Look at him. He keeps calling himself a god, and then one of his kin runs off babbling after a carbon-based monkey, calling him master. You can feel the family drama from orbit. Xiaopang nodded, playing along. If I have a daughter someday, no blonde-haired boy will come within 100 meters. Piangay adopted a melodramatic tone. Prepare to witness the fury of a Tan. Overlord Zarahush slammed its form against the matrix again, the strike sounding like thunder in the corridor. Its eyes, if it had such things, burned with an ancient, implacable rage. I will break free and I will consume you, you damned carbon-based monkey. Shieling planted himself between Qin Yun and the matrix, defiant. You will not harm my master. He is not a carbon-based monkey. He is Xiling's master. The players all turned to look at Piangay, who had been grinning like a cat that had swallowed the canary. He shrugged with innocent mischief. Now, let's see a god throw a tantrum. P.S. Another update. Still 2 more chapters to go. Hopefully I can finish them before the end of the month. The update's a bit late because I've been writing 14,000, 15,000 words a day. It's hard to be punctual while also checking details. In future, if I finish before midnight, I'll post then. If after midnight, I'll post at 7 a.m. The mountain shook under the wrath of a Tan. It quickly became clear that the destruction of the Emperor's Scythe's fortress monastery was the work of the transcendent Zahulash. Zahulash had once been one of the oldest entities in the Holy Terra universe, a being that fed on stars. He had once cooperated with the Krorks. Together with other Cetan, he consumed Krork flesh and souls and remade them into Necrons, beings of living metal. After the Paradise War, the Necrons exploited the Tan's weakening and betrayed their makers. Zahulash himself was shattered by that betrayal. One fragment of him was imprisoned by the Necrons inside the Pharos lighthouse, used as a power source and stabilizer. A vast army of constructs was left to guard the jail. Ordinarily, the Tan fragment should have been safely contained within a dimensional cube. For a long time it was. But during the Horus Heresy, Dantioch of the Iron Warriors, in a bid to counter the Midnight Lord, overloaded the Pharos lighthouse and destroyed its main base station. Later, forces under Guilliman carried out demolition operations. Those blows didn't destroy the Pharos entirely, but they damaged critical systems and introduced a flaw into the dimensional cube. Zahulash seized the chance and began to push against the weakened restraints. As the lighthouse's self-repair functions began to patch the damage, a Tyranid invasion struck. After stripping Sotha of biomass, the Tyranids tunneled down and burst into fierce fighting with the Necron jailers. The subterranean channels that twisted through the metal maze were the work of the Tyranid worker strains. The two sides fought long and bloody fights until the Tyranids realized there was no reward. Necron constructs contained no organic matter to feed them. Suffering immense losses, the Tyranids withdrew. Zahulash used the chaos to break more of his bonds, hammering continuously at the light wall matrix that held him until the power overflowed. That overflow shattered the already dilapidated fortress monastery and drew Qin Yun and his party to the scene. Zahulash sensed Xiling and guided her toward him. The star god rejoiced at the sight of new kin. After all, the Holy Terra universe, in his eyes, belonged to the Tan. He swore the traitors who had betrayed him would pay. Then he saw his newborn kin calling a carbon-based monkey master. Rage radiated from him. How could a noble god submit to a human? He drove himself against the matrix light wall again and again, determined to break free and tear that mortal limb from limb. This Tan fragment must have gotten Khorne's blessing. His fury is terrifying. Wan Lao barked as he swung his battle axe, cleaving Necron constructs that poured from the corridor. Zahulash's struggle had awakened more of the constructs. Purge protocols activated, and the metal defenders swarmed to arrest all intruders. This is the fury of the wronged, an anger that only eases when the world burns, Piangay said from inside an exoskeleton suit, cutting down a scorpion-like construct with a blast. For the God Emperor, Little Alpaca added, sweeping his two-handed greatsword in a single stroke and slicing several Necron soldiers in half at the waist. The broken remains sparked and oiled fluid sprayed as the parts collapsed. An oversized Iron Rider-type servitor on tracked treads blocked a corridor, its autocannon barking as it swept incoming constructs from the approach. Players and Adeptus Mechanicus personnel fought to hold corridor entries while Carr plugged into drone control systems and scanned the maze. Over 10,000 years, Carr had forged the armor of fate and Primaris space marines, hunted STCs, and studied xenotechnology, including Necron lore. He'd even parleyed with Trazen the Infinite to exchange knowledge of Necron language and culture. Using that accumulated expertise, Carr quickly identified a likely master control unit, a house-sized spherical core plated with silver xeno runes that gave off a faint green glow. "Take Sealing there," Qin Yun ordered. "She'll reverse engineer the Pharos and reshape it." "And you, guide?" Carr asked. "I'll hold him off," Qin Yun said, his eyes fixed on the imprisoned star god. Carr nodded. "Praise the Omnissiah. That is the optimal course." "Follow Carr," Qin Yun told Xiling. "Gain control of the Pharos lighthouse and reverse engineer the relevant systems." "Understood, Master. Xiling will take control as quickly as possible," she replied. She fell in with Carr and several tech guard, a group of players giving covering fire. Carr raised a force field projector to shield himself and Xiling from Necron Gauss weapons. The Khitan might be immortal in origin, but Xieling's current body was mortal. The tech guards opened fire, melting and lasering constructs out of the way. They reached the Pharos core chamber. Xiling placed her hand on the sphere and linked to it. Carr and the guards kept the Necrons at bay. As a High Lord of Terra, Carr was no slouch. He wielded a long-handled power axe that could cleave Necrons in half with a single blow, and an array of weapons protruded from his frame. His personal firepower rivaled that of a legion. "Damn, this is how an Adeptus Mechanicus should do things," Old Bird said, eyes gleaming as he watched Carr's arsenal. "I want one of those." "This kit isn't cheap," Wumo muttered, "but the output's insane. If we had that firepower, Battlefield MVP would be ours." Old Bird blasted a construct back with a pulse gun. "Who says an Adeptus Mechanicus can't snatch MVP? We should pool funds for mods right now. Discard frail flesh, embrace mechanical ascension." The banter cut through the noise of battle, but back in the prison hall, the pressure on the Matrix kept building. Boom after boom rattled the chamber as Zahulash slammed against his bonds. The entire mountain groaned. Metal groaned and then cracked. With a deafening shudder, the dimensional cage shattered, sending fragments scattering. The Catan fragment was free. He stepped out, silver skin that shimmered, a stern, exaggerated face set somewhere between human and Eldari, cold, cruel, utterly alien. Power arced across his body, and a glowing core in his chest pulsed with terrifying energy. "Tremble, you lesser beings," Zahulash intoned. "Overlord Zahulash walks among the stars once more." Xiaopang watched him break free and grinned. "Looks like the guide's going to have to face his old star god father." Rage poured off Zahulash as he looked at the humans. A bladed staff shimmered into his left hand, and a crown formed above his head, both forged from living silver metal, radiating destructive starlight. "I am the embodiment of law, the ruler of the holy Terra universe," he declared. Qin Yun drew the staff of divine retribution. Psychic power surged through him, his body lit with aura that matched his opponent's might. "You are no longer needed here," he said. "Go protect Xiling and Carr." His command echoed through the minds of players and Mechanicus alike. "Looks like it's boss time." "Let's fall back, brothers," someone called. Epic clash between Blondie and the wronged party, another joked. Piange scolded them for glibness. The players moved fast, but Tech Guard and servitors hesitated. Qin Yun's order conflicted with their pre-programmed directives, and their logic modules stalled between priorities. Qin Yun sent another psychic command. "This is the will of the Omnissiah. Abandon previous tasks and protect the High Lord." At that, the Tech Guard and servitors shifted to Carr's location. With the human defenders pulled away, the Necron constructs concentrated on the prison hall. Scarabs, canoptech spiders, swarms of murder drones poured in like a metallic tide, all eyes fixed on Zahulash. They were determined to prevent their prisoners' escape. Zahulash waved his staff, and entire waves of constructs dissolved into glittering dust, unable to reconstruct. Still, for every group he destroyed, another surged forward. "You overestimate yourselves," he snarled. "I am a god, an invincible god." He blasted pulsing fields of energy that mangled the metal horde. Qin Yun seized openings and struck with psychic bolts of lightning that cracked against Zahulash's metallic flesh. Dozens of arc-shaped Necron drones darted forward, metal jaws yawning and spines protruding. Each expelled a long metal stylet that hummed with an annihilation field. Before Zahulash could finish them off, they jabbed their needles into his metallic torso and detonated their fields, forcing the star god to howl in anger and pain. Zahalash unleashed a cataclysmic burst, wiping nearby constructs away. He conjured a spear of burning starlight and hurled it. The mountain erupted, the fortress monastery split open, and a path to the outside tore through the rock. Zahalash surged forward, seized Qin Yun, and slammed him through the breach. The Necron tide followed, pouring outward, battlefield and conflict shifting from the mountain's guts to the open air. Meanwhile, in the server core, Shieling worked through the Pharos' defenses. Necron tech was rooted in the Star God's design. Even if the living Cetan had been betrayed, their imprint remained in Necron constructs and protocols. Shieling decrypted layers of ancient encryptions with ease. Streams of data flooded her memory core: architecture, control permissions, subsystem schematics. She absorbed it all with inhuman efficiency. When she opened her eyes, everything had changed. The Pharos lighthouse answered to her. The control permissions were hers. The lighthouse was hers. Stop. They are not enemies. Sealing issued the order through a psychic link to the Necron constructs besieging the players and the tech guard. Like a tide, the constructs halted. The clamorous alarms in the maze died away. The engagement is over. In the name of the Omnissiah, cease fire. Seeing the constructs stand down, Kor ordered the tech guard and the players to do the same. He walked toward Sealing by the core. The little angel girl's eyes still flowed with complex binary patterns. Kor hurried up to her. Have you acquired the core technology of the Pharos Lighthouse? Sealing answered. Reverse engineering will still take 36 hours and 50 minutes. For now, I've only extracted the core data and the lighthouse's code. It's over already? Xiao Pang looked at the Necron tomb spider that had stopped attacking and prodded it with his exoskeletal arm. It retreated a few steps and made no move. I haven't even used my full strength yet, and it's already over? Shichi Lang crowed. Honestly, I'm just too strong. Who was the one crying for escort earlier, anyway? Little Alpaca teased. It certainly wasn't me. How could I, the illustrious leader of the Thousand Sons, do something so undignified? Shichi Lang assumed an air of offended righteousness. Even if I, Shichi Lang, had to kneel and get eaten alive by scarabs, I would never ask for help. Pyongyang mimicked him in a high, pleading voice. Oh, I can't take it anymore. Somebody, any godfather, rescue me. The others burst out laughing. The impression was uncanny. Slander. That's slander against me, Shichi Lang protested. I swear on Magnus's mind that I never said such a thing. No wonder Magnus is brainless. So it was you all along, you damned Imperial traitor. Prepare to die. Seize Shichi Lang. Return Magnus's brain. The players bickered and joked, light-hearted as ever. Boom! A deafening impact came from outside, and the ground shuddered. Shiling's expression tightened. Her master was fighting the former prisoner of the Pharos. She could not stand idly by while he was bullied. Shieling looked at the waiting Necron constructs and issued her first command since taking control of the lighthouse. Disassemble yourselves. Use your bodies as raw materials to repair the Pharos lighthouse as fast as possible. The constructs obeyed. The living metal of their bodies decomposed and flowed into the ruined structure, integrating with the lighthouse's framework and rapidly patching its breaches. Under the self-sacrifice of countless Necron machines, the Pharos was visibly regenerated. In a short time, the damaged lighthouse was fully restored. Energy surged along the passageway runes, flared into brilliance, and finally poured into the core. A beam of light shot from the spire and vanished into the void. Outside on Sotha's surface, Zahurash was locked in combat with waves of Necron constructs. Because Xiling hadn't ordered the besieging units to stand down, they continued to follow their mandate and prevent Zahurash's escape. Qin Yun moved around the battlefield, striking with psychic ambushes that enraged Zahurash further. Zahurash's power was terrifying, capable of ripping sky and ground apart, but he was only a fragment and could not overwhelm the sheer number of constructs and a living saint of the Corpse Emperor who wielded powerful sorcery. The fight had reached a stalemate. When Xiling activated the Pharos, that balance broke. A force capable of annihilating existence swept from the lighthouse toward Zahurash. This was the first time Xiling displayed such power. An uncanny synthesis of reality, law, and warp energy, devastating and unlike anything Zaharaj had seen. He was hurled back, his metallic form scorching, nearly melted away. How can you command psychic power? This violates the laws of Holy Terra. Zaharash's face registered fear and confusion. He could not understand how Zeeling, another Tan, could wield both warp authority and the edicts of the material realm. What have you done to her, human? The broken Zaharash glared at Qin Yun high above. Such a perfect specimen of his kind, bound to a lowly carbon-based ape. Qin Yun gave no answer. He began to seal the fragment with psychic wards, etching brilliant runes in the air. Zaharash's body collapsed inward into a globe of energy wrapped by glowing sigils, and finally crystallized. Qin Yun retrieved the crystal containing Zaharash's fragment and returned to the lighthouse. By then, the Pharos was fully restored. The Necron constructs had dismantled themselves to rebuild it and had cleared rubble and carrion. Sealing brightened as Qin Yun entered. Master, I've grown stronger. Shieling can protect you better now. That's excellent, Qin Yun praised her. After Shieling finished reverse engineering the lighthouse, a golden screen appeared before Qin Yun. Quest, construct a new lighthouse, completed. Faith reward has been issued. Infuse the Corpse Emperor's power into the Pharos lighthouse to complete its conversion and enable superluminal fixed-point teleportation. Superluminal fixed-point teleportation is limited to travel between two lighthouses. Players and NPCs can quickly return within a lighthouse's effective range. Qin Yun followed the prompt and placed his hand upon the lighthouse core. Golden light surged from him like a torrent and poured into the Pharos. The Necron code and runes in the core rewove into human binary glyphs. Necron script on the machine surfaces burned to ash, and human script took its place. Here and there, the golden double-headed Aquila bloomed. The beacon's light shifted to a radiant gold, like a second Astronomicon. This is the supreme power of the Omnissiah, murmured the gathered members of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Excited, they raised the gear salute and hailed Qin Yun in praise of the Omnissiah. The activation and conversion of the Pharos struck the galaxy like a meteor into the ocean, sending shockwaves outward. On Macragge, Guilliman, preparing to launch his crusade against the Chaos Traders, received a report from Chief Librarian Tigurius. A beam had appeared over Sotha, emitting the aura of the Corpse Emperor. This must be the guide's masterpiece. He succeeded, Tigurius said. Guilliman's face lit with hope. With the Sotha Pharos converted into a beacon of the Corpse Emperor, even if the Second Empire's secrets were exposed later, its existence could not shake Guilliman's authority. Eldrad Ulthran and other Eldar who planned to accompany Guilliman also detected the activation. At first they bristled, thinking humanity had embraced Necron technology too far. Then the conversion itself astonished them. The cold Pharos light now carried psychic fluctuations. Necron technology never involves the warp. This was humanity's work, but no one could discern how it had been done. What are they trying to achieve? Eldrad wondered. As a great seer, he found the threads of galactic fate becoming inexplicably tangled. Humanity was growing ever more difficult for him to read. Across the galaxy, Abaddon, pressing the Great Raider Crusade toward its final blow against the Imperium, learned of the new lighthouse through a Chaos Sorcerer. A new Pharos, Abaddon muttered. Are they afraid Terra might fall? Making a backup, perhaps. No matter what the Emperor's pawns contrive, the Sorcerer said, it is futile. I will snuff out their efforts and conquer the galaxy. Abaddon's face hardened. He knew Guilliman had been resurrected. He vowed to show that even a Primarch reborn was impotent. The age of the Primarchs was over. His era, the era of Abaddon, chosen by the Dark Gods, would reign. Among the servants of chaos, the Berserker Angron noticed the Pharos beam and seethed. Though most memories of his past were lost, a deep loathing toward the one who had called himself his father lingered. He could not destroy Terra's Astronomicon, but he could destroy this new light. Angron rose from the crimson arenas, gathered the World Eaters and other bloodthirsty warriors, and set his course for Sotha to obliterate the lighthouse. Back aboard the Imperial Glory, the Sotha mission was declared a complete success. Qin Yun had Shieling post an update announcement for the new version of Warhammer OL on the official site. Update announcement: through tireless effort, Warhammer OL 2.0 has launched. We have updated and improved many issues raised by players. First, a brand new commercial finance system has been introduced. Players can accelerate development via loans, fundraising, and other means. Second, Aquila coins and contribution points now have foundational exchange architecture, enabling the purchase of weapons and equipment from Forge Worlds using contribution points. Third, hyperspace communication and teleportation are now available. You can communicate across systems and, with sufficient faith points, teleport quickly back to a city or between lighthouses. Fourth, the merit system will soon open. Players can serve as planetary governors, advance to fleet commanders, or rise to high generalships based on merit. Stay tuned. Fifth, campaign rules have been improved and now use score calculations. Warbands may declare war independently on enemies of the Imperium. Want territory? Want honor? Want glorious combat? Go forth. The Corpse Emperor has placed all of this in the Eye of Terror. Sixth, qualifications to purchase warships and commercial barges will be opened. Players should prepare funds and submit purchase proposals to NPC ship owners. Beware scams. Seventh, the loot system has been updated. Key mission items will be reclaimed by the system. Other loot belongs to participants. Individual players may use a point allocation system. Warbands will use DKP and GKP to ensure fairness. Eighth, a player penalty system will be implemented, with the guide as chief judge and Shieling as co-judge. NPCs or players who have passed loyalty assessments will serve as reviewers. Reviews will focus on rule violations, including but not limited to abusing NPCs or players, maliciously causing deaths, fraud, and bullying. A solemn warning to players: Warhammer OL is a 100% realistic virtual reality game. Every NPC is a valuable asset. Once they die, it can cascade into major plot changes. Should malicious disruption occur, the official team reserves the right to impose penalties and pursue accountability. Creating a good game environment relies on you, on us, and on everyone. Finally, Little Ceiling wishes everyone good health and happiness. The boss also reminds you that Warhammer OL is a casual entertainment simulation of villainy. Your job is to stop the gods, favored heroes, and prevent the arrival of the Age of Gods. Don't overwork yourselves. Plus daily thought. Sacrifice is the Imperium's cornerstone. Life is the Corpse Emperor's currency, blood the spark of civilization, and death the end of duty. Qin Yun checked the announcement, confirmed there were no issues, and had Shieling post it on the official site. Truly a treat for the diligent players, a provocation to spur them onward. P.S. Sorry for the delay. The plot was revised several times, so it's late. My fault. Please continue to support. Burst updates will continue. As long as the universe doesn't explode, the author won't rest. 98. Imperial Glory upgrade. Added Return to City function. The version update announcement had barely gone live on the official site before the forums and chat groups erupted. A bowl of lobster soup. Leisure? Do they mean the kind of leisure where you get chopped to pieces 9 times in 3 days? Qi Tingjiang only wants progress. Hello, is this 9/11? I'm reporting a game company for false advertising. Selected little alpaca of God. Korn would be silent and Slaanesh would cry. How can the official call this casual? Second Empire Warmaster. Teleportation in the new version? No way, I thought I'd have to spend days running across maps. One night output. Slaanesh 10 times. I've finished the guide's tasks. I'll take some time to analyze the new update for you. Slaanesh Chosen who sells videos. Support. Strong support. Fat face who kisses Nurgle. Madly. Grab a folding stool and some melon seeds, waiting for the expert's guide. Nylong also wants to be the Emperor's Chosen. I can never repay you. Here, take a Nylong hug. One night output Slaanesh 10 times. At Nylong also wants to be the Emperor's Chosen. Don't repay kindness with enmity. Nylong also wants to be the Emperor's Chosen. Soon a long post titled Warhammer OL New 2.0 Version Update, Mechanisms Explained appeared on the Warhammer OL forum. Hello everyone, I'm Shishi Lang. Nice to see you all again. It's been almost half a year since the closed beta. The dev team has made many incremental updates, mission modules, the cybernetics store, new maps, new NPCs, but a large-scale update like today's is a first, so a longer overview is necessary. Let's go through the major changes. First, commercial finance, which we've discussed before. Warhammer OL is a 100% realistic VR simulation. Gear is hard to get and expensive, and the death penalty is brutal. When you die, you drop all your equipment. Die a few times, and you may unlock the Penniless achievement. To prevent players from being stranded naked, the devs introduced a loan service. Players can use a credit system to borrow money to buy equipment and farm. Enjoy first, pay later. This lets players get a strong start without tedious grinding and gives most players the drive to hustle to repay debts. The downside: die too often, and you risk not only penniless, but heavily indebted. Especially for players who go mech or Adeptus Mechanicus routes, costs are high. Their damage may be great, but cost effectiveness is poor. Second, conversion between contribution points and Aquila coins. This has been hinted at. The intensity seems increased this patch, and it's very likely the guide has reached an understanding with the Primarch. All updates in Warhammer OL tie closely to plot development. For example, the cybernetics store that appeared early on only became available after we rescued Priest Tina. Now, the devs specifically point out that contribution points link to Aquila coins, which probably means Primarch endorsement. Guilliman is regent of the human empire. If he backs it, contribution points effectively become imperial currency. Maybe one day, the empire will extend loans to us, but that needs more financial systems. Third, and most significant, this patch adds the return to town function every RPG should have. Warhammer OL is realistic, but the maps are huge. Running across zones for days is unbearable. Dying once and having to run it all back is maddening. The devs added teleportation. Players on Macragge can reach Sotha with a single teleport. It's convenient, fast, saves time, and lets players invest more into gameplay. Excited? Don't celebrate too soon. The announcement said soon, so the feature still needs refinement. After posting, Chandonglai stood to make tea. On returning, he found the official site showing 999 plus notifications. Popular as always. He clicked through and skimmed a few comments. Shi Lao is as sharp as ever. Real finance pro. Clear and logical, one read. Shi Si Lang, thanks for sharing, another. These guys still have some conscience, Qiandonglai muttered, sipping tea. He opened the Warhammer chat group and watched the banter. Midnight Lord asks if your tupai is itchy. Where's old 13 today? He used to be pretty active. Please have High Guy soup. He didn't get picked 8 times in a row. Maybe he's sulking. September 9th recalls Warband Brothers. We shouldn't be so cruel next time. Gilliman is the only son. Now that you've lost me, you know how sad it is. Hurry up and reserve a slot for me. Juke 7 captures Carbonda. Old 13's not even active this time. Is he disloyal to the Emperor? Guilliman is the only son. I was stuck being dragged into a hardware softening project by a woman. After several reviews, I finally got my phone back. Ningba Ren just needs to use a twisted hammer. How many reviews do you need? Even once would do. Qiandonglai finished his tea while the group argued about the hardware softening project. Fun bunch. He stretched, put on his game helmet, and prepared to work like a beast for the Emperor. On Sotha, vast numbers of Necron constructs worked tirelessly. Sheeling had gained ultimate control over Pharos and the Necron machines. Whatever command she issued, they obeyed. The sheer speed of their work was astonishing. In a matter of days, they had built a colonial city fit for human habitation, complete with an artificial atmosphere and a life support infrastructure. When the displaced people of Sotha returned to their land, they wept openly. During the Kraken Tyranid fleet's assault, Genis stealers had incited uprisings inside the Hive cities, throwing them into civil war. Sotha's defenses shut down, the gates stood open, and the Tyranids swept in. The Emperor's scythes had been forced to evacuate unpolluted civilians. People wandered homeless for years. For many, the dying wish had been to return to Sotha. Now, that wish was fulfilled. Qin Yun had a black tombstone erected at the entrance of the Emperor's Scythe's former fortress monastery. The fallen hero's deeds were carved into the stone so future generations would remember. Qin Yun watched as returning citizens spontaneously came to the monument to pay respects. The scene pleased him deeply. It repaid the Emperor's scythes a little for leading them through exile. One day, he believed, the Emperor's scythes would rise again on Sotha, their spirit reborn among those who still missed them. Carr set the Adeptus Mechanicus to work on planetary restoration. Missionaries rebuilt statues of the Emperor and the Saints and began cleansing the world of Tyranid taint. Once the preparations were ready, giant collection vessels would haul ice from deep space, melt it into water, Mix it with selected algal spores and microbes, and seed the planet to restore life. After arranging matters on Sotha, Qin Yun instructed Xiling to upgrade the Imperial Glory. Necron constructs scoured the surface and the nearby asteroid belt for resources. Vast mineral halls were funneled into the ship. Xiling disassembled the ore into streams of light and fused that radiance into the vessel's steel. The Imperial Glory underwent transformative changes. Its hull was reshaped, 5 kilometers tall and 12 kilometers long. By Imperial Navy standards, it now qualified as a battleship. The surface armor was replaced with active metal that could repair and proliferate itself. With sufficient energy or raw materials, the armor could continuously regrow and mend. Unless it took massive, concentrated damage, the Imperial Glory would be near unkillable. Lances, macro cannons, and other weapon systems were upgraded for higher damage and accuracy. Most importantly, Xiling built a small Pharos-style lighthouse inside the ship. The lighthouse used the same technology as the Pharos on Sotha. The two beacons could resonate together and extend their influence. Once the Imperial Glory was upgraded and the lighthouses synchronized, Qin Yun and Xiling's will could project across Ultramar. It would allow players to communicate in real time, provided both lighthouses cooperated. "You can post a new announcement," Qin Yun said. "Tell them to enable the Return to City function. For now, the available destinations are the Imperial Glory and Sotha. Also, send an update to the players on Macragge. Tell them to update their data slates," he added. Xiling nodded. "Okay, Master, I'll do it at once." Players within the lighthouse's range heard a simultaneous ding and instinctively checked their data slates. A message prompt flickered up. "New version detected. Pending update. New features. Real-time chat channel and return to city teleportation. Proceed with update." At the same time, the official site posted its own announcement. After several days of work, the real-time chat function and return to city teleportation have been completed. Communication between Macragge and Sotha is now established. Players can chat after updating their data slates. Return to city teleportation. Currently available destinations. 1. Sotha, homeworld of the Emperor's Scythes. Much biomass was stripped away by the Tyranids, but the resilient people of Sotha are rebuilding. If you're passionate about construction and revitalization, Sotha is ideal. 2. Imperial Glory, the Guide's flagship, roaming the void. The Guide seeks humanity's fate. If you offer valuable intelligence, generous rewards may follow. Hint: teleportation consumes faith points. Consumption varies by distance, carried items, and difficulty. Plus daily thought: do not doubt in your heart, and the Emperor will protect you. Chapter 99, Planning for the Future with Guilliman. The War Master, training on Macragge, saw the notification as soon as he finished. He updated immediately. After more than 10 minutes, the data slate finished downloading the patch. 2 new functions appeared: teleport back to city and regional chat channel. He opened the regional channel. Shi Lang. Good heavens, this update is fast. They only said they were releasing version 2.0 a few days ago. Now we can teleport back to the city. Why don't we try it? I already did. Sotha teleported to the Imperial Glory. Instant. You on Macragge should try it. The channel filled with players from Sotha and Macragge trading excited messages. Xilang noticed the absence of anyone from Atoma. No one from Atoma is here. Looks like the real-time chat only works between Sotha and Macragge. This is already incredible. Juge, it seems to be tied to the Pharos lighthouse itself. When the Pharos points to Macragge, you get real-time comms. If it's not pointing at Macragge, you don't. Easy fix. Build a few more lighthouses, set up relays, make an interstellar network, the whole galaxy online. What about employment for us psychers? Sacrifices of the era. No one on Macragge has teleported yet. Who wants to be the guinea pig? Of course this is for @War Master. Why don't you teleport? I'm on Sotha already. Teleport back to city is one way. You can only return, not go elsewhere. War Master, you're the bravest among us. You won't chicken out, will you? Demo, you're War Master Adolfo. Be spirited. Don't lose face. Think of the cheering citizens of Atoma, how passionately you spoke back then. The War Master smiled at the flattery and gave in. All right, stop buttering me up. You're just praising me, so I'll be the guinea pig, aren't you? he added, but he was already on his data slate. He selected the Imperial Glory and tapped Teleport Back to City. A confirmation popped up. Do you confirm consuming 1,025 faith points to return to the Imperial Glory? He confirmed without hesitation. The slate replied, Request received. Processing. Your coordinates have been locked. Please do not move. Warp countdown, 30, 29, 28, 3, 2, 1, 0. Warping. When the countdown hit 0, the War Master felt the surrounding space twist. Moments later, everything snapped back to normal, and he had materialized on the teleportation deck of the Imperial Glory. Shishi Lang, Ningba Ren, and the others who had gathered there cheered. He really came. Awesome. YYDS. The War Master grinned at them. This teleportation is incredibly convenient. He pulled up the chat channel. Brothers, confirmed, return to City Works. Macrage to the Imperial Glory takes only a few seconds. At Bald Donkey, stop farming goodwill. Teleport over. Bald Donkey. All right, I'm coming. A dozen seconds later, Bald Donkey appeared on the deck. This is amazing. Sotha and Macrage are so far apart, but I was instant. I need to tell the others to come over too. One by one, players from Macrage tried the new function. Once the novelty passed, they all stared at each other in bemused silence. Teleporting there took nothing more than a tap, but getting back was a headache. They'd have to fly home slowly by ship. The official forum erupted. Cloud players, those left out of closed beta, were furious. They should all be killed, one raged. When will the 9th wave of closed beta invites drop? Another demanded. Extreme sadness, someone else wrote. How many versions have I missed? Back on the Imperial Glory, Qin Yun was calibrating the ship's lighthouse array with shielding. Unlike the Astromicon, a psychic construct, the Pharos lighthouse had been built by the Necrons during the Paradise War under the guidance of the Khitan. It operated on the principle of quantum entanglement resonance and responded to the user's thoughts. Think of Macrage, and the lighthouse would point to Macrage, allowing navigation and near-instant communications over vast distances. Qin Yun sat in the throne connected to the lighthouse. The first planet he considered was Terra, but the system dismissed it. He thought of Atoma. The quantum entanglement apparatus in the ship roared, and the vessel shuddered. Shielding adjusted the ship's buffering structure, letting the pulse dissipate into the void. A projection formed before Qin Yun, only a blurry shadow. The Pharos' range had limits. The Calixis sector was far from Ultramar, so only a hazy outline could be made. He then thought of Feng, and the projection sharpened into the outline of a magnificent meeting chamber. Within it appeared Planetary Governor Feng, Bishop Heidelake, and Tech Sage Casca, blurred but identifiable. The guide still hasn't sent any news, and the Collin family's influence is growing, Heidelake said. Let them come, Feng replied. The Valanxius family never betrays. We'll fight to the last man. Casca, with the Mechanicus' dry humor, cut in. Governor, I must remind you, you're the last of the Valanxius line, and your wife isn't pregnant yet. Is this really the time to talk about that? Feng snapped, annoyed. I'm talking about resistance. The Adeptus Mechanicus follows objective laws, Casca said coolly. You are, technically, the last. Qin Yun tried to call them. Feng? Heidelake? Casca? But received no reply. After several attempts, he gave up and selected another target, Guilliman. On Atoma, in the Spire district of Tyrian Hive City, Feng was in the conference room with Bishop Heidelake and Casca when he suddenly grew quiet and looked around, startled. What's wrong? Heidelake asked. I thought I heard the guide's voice. Was he here? Feng sounded uncertain. You're hallucinating, Heidelake said bluntly. The Lord Guide is on Macrage right now. But I really heard a faint voice, Feng insisted. By the Omnissiah, you have no psychic talent, Casca said. Even if the guide wanted to speak to you, he couldn't. All right, maybe I was hallucinating, Feng muttered. On the bridge deck of the Queen-class battleship Imperial Glory, Guilliman regarded the projection of Qin Yun and smiled. Who would have thought that after 10,000 years, I'd see the Pharos light again? It reminds me of Dantioch, an iron warrior whom Perturabo humiliated for his pride. Guilliman's voice was wry. Qin Yun steered the conversation back. Discussion about Perturabo won't help. Let's talk about the Pharos. Guilliman listened as Qin Yun explained. It manipulates quantum entanglement between particles. Entanglement is a fundamental phenomenon of the universe, but the Pharos can regulate those states and force resonance between objects and locations repeatedly across vast distances. It's both beacon and weapon. If we can control it, humanity could reduce its reliance on the warp. Gilliman nodded. I know. When I first used it, someone gave me a detailed report about its principles and usage. Dantioch wrote it. You might wonder why not the Adeptus Mechanicus. They were already too rigid and pedantic. They spent years arguing whether to destroy or study the Pharos. Their indecision is infuriating. Qin Yun smiled. You can set that worry aside now. This is the core technology. Sealing has reverse-engineered it. It's a technological path humanity never conceived of. We only need time to replicate the systems. If humanity can build 10, 20, or 1,000 such lighthouses to light the sky, warp storms might no longer plague us. Guillemin's expression went serious. That's visionary, but everything carries risk. If an enterprise only seems to bring benefit, then my advice is caution. It might attract things we don't want. The Pharos isn't the Astronomicon. The Astronomicon is protected by the Emperor's power. The Pharos has no such safeguard. Then don't rush, Gilliman said. We should evaluate the risks before widespread deployment. Greed and impatience lead to disaster. My father found that out. The Emperor believed that securing the webway would guarantee humanity's safety. Launched the Great Crusade, built the Imperium, and gambled on the webway. The result was betrayal, sons at each other's throats, and the Emperor suffering upon the throne for 10,000 years. We must weigh pros and cons. I will, Qin Yun answered. That's prudent. Gilliman smiled. The situation at Sotha is settled. Will you help me launch the campaign to reclaim Ultramar? If we act together, I can make my way to Terra sooner. Qin Yun shook his head. No, I must return to the Calixis sector. A flash of disappointment crossed Gilliman's face. So soon. The Collin family's rebellion is escalating. I need to return and take command. Some of the players will stay to fight with you. I'll implement new policies and trial technologies in Calixis. When you control Terra, you can use the Calixis sector as a template for reform. I'll also deploy Pharos technology in Calixis to see if we can build a communication network. They talked for more than 2 hours before cutting the connection. The quantum engine powered down, and the communication room sank into darkness. Qin Yun sat alone in the dimness, thinking of the rebellion the Collin family had stirred up. It was time to go back and put down the uprising, and to test the new technologies there. P.S. Originally, I only owed 1 chapter, but the average subscription rose to 1,500, and monthly votes exceeded 1,500. According to the burst update rules, 2 more chapters were due, so I owe 3 updates. 100, natural selection, go forward 4. After resolving the matter on Sotha, Qin Yun began preparing to return to the Calixis sector. Within the galaxy, Sealing could make use of the quantum resonance of 2 Pharos lighthouses to observe and supervise players inside their coverage areas. That neatly solved the problem of supervising players across such vast galactic distances. In the future, with more Pharos lighthouses built, they could cover most of the galaxy, finally resolving issues of mission assignment and reward distribution. No matter how far away, Qin Yun could issue missions and hand out rewards through the lighthouses and even allow players to teleport between them. The only pity was that Gilliman did not fully trust the Pharos lighthouse technology. Qin Yun understood his mindset. After the Horus heresy, the Primarchs were wary of gifts from fate, afraid they might be exploited by the Chaos Gods again. The Emperor's original plan had been perfect. If not for Magnus and Abaddon, there might have been no catastrophe. Those two showed that no matter how formidable the enemy, a teammate's sudden, brilliant idea could cause the greatest damage. Magnus's psychic call had cost the Custodian Guard dearly in the webway, throwing the Emperor's plans into disarray. The Custodians were forced to fight daemons in the webway for years alongside the Sisterhood of Silence and the Adeptus Mechanicus forces. By the final battles, they were so exhausted they had no blood left in their bodies, sustained only by stimulants. That was why so few Custodians were present during the Siege of Terra. Had they been available, the siege might have lasted a third longer or more. Abaddon's role needed no elaboration. What kind of genius throws his own Primarch into a pit of fire? Abaddon did. He rashly sent the wounded War Master to the Daven Temple, despite Loken and Torgadon of the Council of Four Kings warning it was Ahriman's conspiracy. When Horus's humanity resurfaced and he fought the Chaos Gods for mankind and the Emperor, Abaddon allowed subordinates to use ritual daggers to stab Horus's humanity to death. He embodied the word filial son to the fullest. The Emperor's plan had been perfect, but the Chaos Gods had twisted it. To underestimate them carried a heavy price. They waited patiently, then struck at the deepest weakness. Qin Yun intended to first prove the new technologies in the Calixis sector and only then promote them widely. Before leaving, Qin Yun spent faith points to designate the chapel aboard the Macragge's honor as the player's resurrection point. This ensured the players would follow Guilliman's lead. That eased Guilliman's mood. He had been annoyed by a chapel appearing on his flagship. Before Guilliman was stabbed and put into stasis by Fulgrim, the Macragge's honor had no chapel. At that time, the Imperial truth was dominant, and as an exemplary legion, the 13th had been resolute in carrying out the Emperor's commands. To help Qin Yun quickly suppress rebellion in the Calixis sector and implement reforms, Guilliman issued a letter of authorization in his capacity as regent, entrusting the entirety of the Calixis sector and the Koronus expanse to Qin Yun's management. He also transferred a battleship and several cruisers to reinforce Qin Yun's fleet, improving his ability to contain the uprising. "How about I appoint you War Master of the Imperium? Once we return to Holy Terra, I will issue the appointment formally," Guilliman suggested during their communication. "It's better to give this position to someone more suitable," Qin Yun replied immediately and politely refused. Such a title shouldn't be granted lightly. When the Lion returned, what look would he give? Horus snatching the War Master title had been bad enough. Now a saint dressed as Sanguinius was trying to take his position. Where was justice? "Is there anyone in the Imperium more suitable than you?" Guilliman asked, puzzled. "I am the Father's only true son now. My other brothers are gone. You're the only one who can hold this post." "That's hard to say." Qin Yun shook his head. "Several Primarchs are missing. Only Ferris and Sanguinius have confirmed deaths. We cannot assume the other Primarchs are dead without confirmed bodies," Guilliman said. "When the Emperor made you, he made you on a template meant for immortality. Your theoretical physiological lifespan far exceeds 10,000 years. Without confirmation, any of them might return." "I hope so," Qin Yun said. Guilliman looked doubtful, but nodded. Qin Yun was unwilling to accept the War Master title now. They could discuss it later. With the Pharos lighthouses in place, even if Qin Yun returned to the Calixis sector, they could stay in contact, so there was no rush. Eldrad Ulthron, the Eldar Farseer, visited Qin Yun before he left. The recent actions of the Emperor's saint, Qin Yun, made it clear he influenced humanity's fate, and Eldrad treated the matter with caution. "The Emperor's saint," Eldrad said with a reverent tone, lacking the usual Eldar hauteur toward humans. "Farseer," Qin Yun acknowledged. "Thank you, Eldar, for your aid to humanity. I hope our cooperation can continue. In this dark universe, there are few races that can stand with us against chaos," Eldrad agreed. "Our destinies are closely intertwined." "I heard you plan to leave and return to the Calixis sector," Eldrad said, regret in his voice. "The Chaos Gods have fixed their sights on Guilliman. His traitorous brothers are plotting how to deal with him. Only you can help him return safely to Holy Terra." Eldrad did not know Qin Yun could teleport players. Qin Yun had no intention of revealing that trump card. "My departure for the Calixis sector does not mean I cannot help the Primarch," Qin Yun said. "On the contrary, leaving might let me help him better. If both he and I remain here, the Chaos Gods could focus their power against us." "That has merit," Eldrad nodded. "The fate of humanity is ultimately in your hands. We cannot interfere too much." "I also plan to travel. I have lingered on Macragge too long." "Where will the Prophet go?" Qin Yun asked. "The Eldari's fate is more sorrowful than humanity's. Bieltan has been destroyed. The avatar of the Bloody-Handed and the Phoenix Lord bearing the Spear of Twilight were lost in the webway. Many matters need addressing." "Then I wish you a smooth journey," Qin Yun said. "By the way, could you send a few of your kin skilled in psychic arts to the Calixis sector to guide humanity in using psychic abilities?" Eldrad smiled. His earlier goodwill toward the god-chosen had been repaid in a legitimate chance to place Eldari near human affairs, to better understand Qin Yun's movements, to draw the races closer, or both. Of course, I will contact the Usve world and send a few friendly mentors. Thank you for aiding humanity, Qin Yun said. After their conversation, Qin Yun led a group of players back to Calixis. Under his guidance, the fleet sailed steadily through Tsinchian storms. Atoma was flourishing. With the outbreak of the Kholin Rebellion, many refugees had fled there, bringing labor, technology, and capital that accelerated Atoma's industrial development. Dora Workshop expanded repeatedly, building space factories and shipyards. Recently, their first light cruiser, the Natural Selection, was about to make its maiden voyage. Although the Valanxius family had fallen, the Atoma planet they once controlled retained a complete shipbuilding industry. Among the refugees were many skilled workers and tech priests. With those personnel and the Adeptus Mechanicus's technical support, plus the players' tireless efforts, a full shipbuilding chain restarted. In just a few months, the light cruiser had been completed and named Natural Selection by the players. Natural Selection was 1,300 meters long and 414 meters tall, armed with macro cannons, lances, electromagnetic missiles, and other systems. It used conventional plasma engines for real space propulsion, together with a warp drive, and represented Dora Workshop's first attempt at modular construction and design. If successful, this class would be mass-produced. MC Myth was responsible for the Natural Selection's maiden voyage test. A god-tier farming player who had contributed heavily to the design and production, the trial mission naturally fell to him. MC Myth stood on the bridge, looking out through the viewport at the void. The ship was crude in places. Welding burrs and unfinished fittings remained. Orbit cleared. Natural Selection can ignite and depart in 10 minutes, the control tower reported. Natural Selection copies. We will ignite and depart in 10 minutes, MC Myth replied, keeping his excitement in check. The tower fell silent, and the bridge filled only with the hum of machinery and the breath of those present. Everyone was nervous. It was the first warp-capable ship built by the players. MC Myth glanced around and joked to ease the tension. MC Legend, how are the battles between Trisolaris and Earth today? MC Legend pretended to be stunned, then laughed, stood, and gave an exaggerated Aquila salute. Reporting, Commander, the Earth fleet was completely destroyed yesterday. Only Bronze Age and Quantum survived. MC Myth made an over-the-top face. Those Trisolarans go too far. Order Wade. No, order Blackwatch to wipe out their homeworld and Cheng Sin along with it. The others laughed, the tension dissolving. Natural Selection, you may now ignite and depart, the control tower announced. Understood. Natural Selection will ignite and depart, MC Myth confirmed, then turned to the assembled players and tech priests. Natural Selection, ignite, full ahead. Let us set sail for the Sea of Stars,